This is an Alt-Shift-X live stream. Let's talk about House of the Dragon, Season 2, Episode 7, The Red Sowing. The sowing of the seeds, in which a bunch of dragons were claimed by various Targaryen bastards called dragon seeds. We have new dragon riders. Ulf the White has claimed Silverwing, and Hugh the Hammer, the blacksmith, has claimed Vermithor, the Bronze Fury, along with Adam now on Sea Smoke. So Rhaenyra now has a bunch more dragons than the Greens. And at the end of the episode, Aemond and Vhagar ran away from Rhaenyra's overwhelming strength in dragons. We also had some acknowledgement of Adam by Corlys, just a little bit. We saw Daemon trying to rally the Riverlords. We saw Rhaena going off in the Vale, perhaps searching for a dragon of her own. We got some interesting new information about the parentage of some of these characters. Like, Hugh says that his mother was a sibling of Balon, the father of Viserys and Daemon. So we're going to talk about Hugh's probable mother, Sarah Targaryen. And we've also heard a little bit more about what's going on in the Reach, with House Beesbury stirring up a ruckus in the Reach. And Alicent and Viserys' third son, Daeron, is now riding his dragon Tessarion. So we're going to talk all about that. And we're going to try and answer your questions. And we are not going to spoil future episodes. And we're going to have fun. We're doing these live streams every week at about 10 p.m. Eastern Time. So like and subscribe, and let's talk dragons. Thanks for the donation from Marcelo, who says, this episode felt like the show was living up to its name. The dragons are here. Hugh seems to have gone to the Jon Snow school for yelling at dragons. Yeah, that's a good point. In Game of Thrones Season 8, we saw Jon Snow shouting at the dragon Viserion. And that was his main contribution to the the War for the Dawn in the Game of Thrones show. And yes, in a similar way, we saw Hugh shouting at Vermithor, which I thought was great. It was like Hugh was roaring back at Vermithor, showing that he too is a dragon. It seems that Vermithor accepted Hugh because Hugh was brave, and Hugh was crazy enough to stand up to this dragon, this rampaging dragon. The dragon seems to respect bravery. And also, I think, on some level, Hugh was ready to die. I think that Hugh, he's just lost his daughter. We learned that Hugh and Kat's daughter has died of that sickness that she had. And maybe Hugh was kind of a bit suicidal after the death of his daughter, and that was part of what was going on when he stood in front of this dragon Vermithor. But yeah, now he has the dragon Vermithor. And he's now one of the most powerful people in the world, because Vermithor is the second largest dragon in this world after Vhagar. So yeah, exciting stuff. Where should we start? Thanks for the donation from Duba, who says, if Corlys is not Targaryen, why does he have silver hair? Yeah, so Corlys is a Velaryon, and the Velaryons are one of 3 Valyrian families. So House Targaryen, House Velaryon, and House Celtigar came from Valyria, which was the empire of the Dragon Lords. The Targaryens were Dragon Lords. They are the only surviving dragon-riding family. The Velaryons and the Celtigars are from Valyria, but they are not a dragon-riding family. They can't ride dragons. Laenor Velaryon and Laena Velaryon can ride dragons because their mother was Rhaenys Targaryen. So you need some of that Targaryen blood in order to ride dragons. So the Velaryons and Celtigars, they can't ride dragons, but they do have that silver hair. And so, Corlys's son, Alan, has that silver hair, which he shaves off. But it's interesting that Adam has black hair, but Adam can ride a dragon. He rides the dragon Sea Smoke. So you don't necessarily need the silver hair to ride a dragon. That's true in the books as well. But yeah, it is really interesting. Why can Adam ride a dragon? Like Rhaenyra says this episode, Adam must have some Targaryen blood somewhere because everyone believes that you need Targaryen blood to ride a dragon. And Corlys in this episode says, well, maybe Adam and Alan's mother has Targaryen blood. So in the books, Adam and Alan's mother is called Merilda of Hull, and she's this shipwright. And she was a really successful shipwright. She became a trader, and she owned a bunch of ships for herself. So she was a very, like, ambitious and accomplished woman. And we don't know Merilda's heritage, but it does make sense that Corlys assumes that, well, Adam and Alan's mother must have had some Targaryen blood, and that explains why Adam can ride a dragon. So that's a possibility. And like maybe the other possibility is that you don't need Targaryen blood at all. Maybe any Valyrian family can ride a dragon. No one knows. I thought this was a really cool scene when Rhaenyra went out to confront Adam. Showrunner Ryan Condal compared it to like a western when two gunslingers face each other off, because Rhaenyra has no idea who this guy is and what he's going to do with the dragon. And I think one of the subtexts in this scene is that Rhaenyra is thinking about her ex-husband Laenor, because this dragon Seasmoke that Adam is riding was once ridden by her ex-husband Laenor, and the fact that Adam now has the dragon might suggest that Laenor has now died, because at least in the books it seems that a dragon will never accept a new rider while its old rider is still alive. So I think that Rhaenyra is thinking here like, oh my god, what does this mean for Laenor? And that is a secret that I hope that they will address, because last time we heard, Corlys still believes that Rhaenyra caused or was responsible for Laenor's death. Corlys thinks that Rhaenyra and Daemon had Laenor killed, and it's crazy to me that they haven't addressed that. Hopefully they will do that. Thanks for the super chat from Matthew, who says, what's with the size disparity between Drogon, Rhaegal, Viserion, and the Hot D dragons? Drogon dwarfs these decades-old dragons when he's 5. Yeah, so Drogon, Viserion, and Rhaegal are the dragons of Daenerys in Game of Thrones. And yeah, Daenerys' dragons get a whole lot bigger, or like similar sizes to a lot of the dragons in House of the Dragon. Even though Daenerys' dragons in Game of Thrones are apparently only like 8 years old max. And that doesn't fit with what we see in Hot D, because in Hot D, as you say, like a lot of these dragons are decades old. And a lot of them are still, like Syrax is decades old and yet is smaller than what we see on Game of Thrones. And yeah, it doesn't make sense. The timeline doesn't add up. I mean, you got to remember that in the books, George Martin, the author, his original plan was for the Game of Thrones books to take place over decades. Like a lot of the characters in the Game of Thrones books, like Jon Snow and Daenerys, they're like 14 years old. Like Bran is like 10 years old. And George Martin's plan was that as he wrote the books, he would skip forward years at a time. A little bit like Hot D Season 1, so that the characters would start out as children, but the story would end with them as adults. But as George Martin was writing the story, he realized that, it kind of sucks to do big time skips and jump ahead, because you've got to have nothing happen for years. You've got to skip over stuff. So in the end, George Martin decided to just keep the young characters. So basically, the answer is that the timeline doesn't really add up. And the timeline especially doesn't add up in the Game of Thrones TV show. Like, you look at, like, Sam and Gilly's baby, little Sam. That baby's age makes no sense. So, yeah, I think the answer is don't think about it. But at least in the books, the general idea is that dragons keep growing for their entire lifetime. The older the dragon is, the bigger it is, the more fearsome it is. And at this time in Hot D, the biggest dragons are Vhagar, then Vermithor, then Silverwing. I feel like Silverwing should probably be bigger than how Silverwing appeared in this episode, but yeah. All right, so yeah, Rhaenyra and Laenor, I thought this was a cool confrontation. I thought that the vocalizations, the sounds that these dragons made were really interesting, because the dragons have individual personality, and these dragons, Syrax and Seasmoke, they know each other, from when Rhaenyra and Laenor were married. I don't think we ever saw them interact directly, but I feel like, Seasmoke and Syrax are having their own conversation, their own reunion, at the same time that Rhaenyra and Adam are meeting. And I wonder if, it's implied that there's this psychic magic connection between the writer and the dragon. So I wonder if the existing relationship between Cyrax and Seasmoke might affect Rhaenyra and Adam's feelings about each other. In the books, we see how the warging connection between the Starks and their wolves affects how they feel about people and reflects how they feel about people. So I feel like the dragon's feelings and the dragon's relationships are relevant here as well. There's also theories like, what if Vhagar's history, Aemon's dragon Vhagar, maybe Vhagar's history affects Aemon's behavior, and Vhagar's experience of war in Aegon's conquest and in Dawn might have affected Aemon's growth into a really angry, warlike man. So all of that's interesting. Another thread throughout this episode is the idea of destiny and the gods. A bunch of times, Rhaenyra says, the gods have chosen this. The gods are guiding us to accept these dragon seeds. A lot of talk about destiny, which is really interesting. Like, it makes sense that these dragon lord kings and queens would believe in fate and destiny, and that's a narrative that they use to justify their own rule, right? The king is chosen by the gods, and therefore everyone must obey them. But the books explore a lot the idea that destiny is dangerous. When people think that they are chosen by God to rule the world and to win, they might do terrible things. Like, destiny is an idea that can justify atrocity in fiction and in the real world. So I think it's really cool how they're talking about destiny, and I think it'll be interesting if they sort of question that in the end, if mistakes are made in the name of destiny. I thought it was interesting that Adam said that he is of no particular birth. Like, Rhaenyra asks, what is your parentage? And Adam says his mother was a shipwright and his father is no one of consequence. Adam could have said, my father is Lord Corlys Velaryon, your hand. That would help Adam get accepted by Rhaenyra, surely. Rhaenyra would trust Adam more if he was a Velaryon. And if Adam had said that he's Corlys's son, that could also explain his dragon riding a little bit, because, the Velaryons are Valyrian, and so it's possible that there is some Targaryen blood in there. That's something that I should clarify. Last week's live stream, I wrongly said that there's no examples of Targaryen women marrying into other families. I was wrong. There are a bunch, like, as well as Daella Targaryen marrying an Arryn and birthing Aemma Arryn, and obviously as well as Rhaenys Targaryen marrying Corlys. In the books, it does mention that there was a female Targaryen who married a Velaryon and birthed Valyna Velaryon, who is the mother of Aegon the Conqueror. So Aegon the Conqueror is half Velaryon. But the fact that a Targaryen woman married a male Velaryon, we don't know if this couple's descendants are the ancestors of, like, Corlys, but it's possible. It's possible. So, like, we don't know, it's never clarified, but it is possible in the books and the show that the Velaryons have a little bit of Targaryen blood, and that could explain why Corlys's son, Adam, is able to ride a dragon. Thanks for the donation from Phantom, who says, can you talk about the dragons that have been seen in the show and the ones during Aegon's conquest? Well, Vhagar fought in Aegon's conquest. Vhagar is the giant dragon that is ridden by Aemond Targaryen. And Vhagar is the one surviving dragon who lived in the time of Aegon's conquest. So Vhagar did the Field of Fire alongside Aegon's dragon Balerion and Rhaenys' dragon Meraxes, and they burned thousands and thousands of Lannisters and Gardeners on the Field of Fire. After Rhaenys, well, at least Meraxes was killed in Dawn, Vhagar did the burning and the scorching of Dawn, where Visenya and Vhagar repeatedly devastated Dawn and killed thousands and thousands of civilians. So, like, one of the worst atrocities in Westerosi history was committed by Visenya on Vhagar. So Vhagar has done some evil stuff, which is why it's really interesting that now Aemond is riding this dragon and doing evil stuff. So yeah, Vhagar has this history of being like a wartime dragon that none of these other dragons have. And yeah, so they talked a bit about Adam's parentage, and yeah, it's cool that in the books, Adam and Alan's mother is Marilda of Hull. She was called the Mouse. Marilda was only 16 years old when she birthed Adam, so in the books, Corlys had sex with like a 15 or 16-year-old girl, which is pretty messed up. And I wonder if that's part of Corlys's guilt, because it's really interesting in this episode that Corlys still doesn't acknowledge that Adam and Alan are his children, not openly anyway. And so I wonder, like, why isn't Corlys acknowledging Adam and Alan? Does he feel guilt because he cheated on Rhaenys? Does he feel guilt for having sex with Marilda? Does he feel guilt for having neglected Adam and Alan all their lives? Well, one of the interesting wrinkles is that in the books, it's Marilda who comes forward with Adam and Alan and says, hey, Adam and Alan should claim a dragon. It'll be great. And in the books, Marilda claims that the father of Adam and Alan is Laenor, Corlys' son, despite the fact that everyone knows that Laenor was gay. So, I mean, if Laenor was the father of Adam and Alan, that would explain how Adam can ride a dragon. But it seems like Corlys didn't want to publicly admit that Adam and Alan were his bastards and he cheated on Rhaenys, so he also decided to claim that they were Laenor's kids. But everyone believes that they are Corlys's kids. And in the books, Adam and Alan are only like 15 and 16 years old, whereas in Hot D, they are grown-ass adults, probably too old to be Laenor's children. So they've tweaked some stuff, but otherwise this is all pretty consistent with the books. So, yeah, Adam decides to bend the knee to Rhaenyra, which, you know, makes sense because his father Corlys serves Rhaenyra. And, yeah, this is exactly what Rhaenyra needed. So, yeah, lucky for Rhaenyra. Then we're in King's Landing, and Alicent is confiding with Orwyle. He's treating the scar on her arm. It reminds me in House of the Dragon Season 1, after Alicent cut Rhaenyra's arm, there was this scene where we saw a maester stitching up the cut on Rhaenyra's arm while Laenor was there. So it's another one of those, like, parallel scenes where Alicent and Rhaenyra are going through some of the same stuff. And Alicent sees that there's a rat in the Red Keep and says nothing is clean. So there is this fan theory that maybe Larys has the power of skin changing and is able to see through the eyes of these rats. Some people claim that Larys is the half-brother of Alice Rivers, who we saw with an owl and who does seem to be a greenseer. So I think it's a pretty decent theory that Larys might be a skin changer of rats. I wonder if we might see some hint of that in the finale. Although I do think it's interesting that Larys is not doing a very good job as a Master of Whisperers. Like, Aegon made Larys the Master of Whisperers, and his job was to tend to whispers and to, like, wage a propaganda war and to spread rumors that are going to benefit the Greens and Aegon and Aemond. Larys seems to be failing at that pretty hard, right? Because this episode we see Alinda Massey going around town and collecting up dragon seeds and sending them off to Dragonstone, and Larys fails to notice that that's happening, fails to stop that. That whole riot was caused last episode because Sylvie and Diana and Ulf were spreading those whispers and those rumors, and Larys completely failed to do that. It seems to me that Larys is either grossly incompetent or Larys is secretly, deliberately undermining the Greens. Like, we get an interesting scene where Larys and Jasper are talking about, apparently someone is riding the dragon Seasmoke. That could be important. And Larys is like, yeah, nah, don't tell Aemond about that. It's probably nothing. Do you think that Larys actually thinks it's nothing, or is Larys deliberately undermining the Greens? Larys's alleged half-sister Alice Rivers is helping Daemon and the Blacks in the Riverlands. Maybe Larys is working with her. Maybe Larys is secretly working for the Blacks. Although, in the Red Keep, we see Larys helping Aegon to walk. It seems as though Larys really cares about Aegon. Aegon, who is now all burned and has a broken leg and is struggling to walk again. And it seems as though Larys feels some sincere sympathy for Aegon, sees a bit of himself in Aegon. I mean, they do have, as well as, both having damaged legs, they both have some some bad sexual proclivities. Like, you know, Laris was masturbating over Alicent's feet, and Aegon has assaulted people. Like, they do have multiple similarities, Laris and Aegon. And so I wonder what Laris's plan for Aegon is. Like, you know, being close to the king could get Laris more power, and it does seem as though Laris wants more power. But Laris also speaks about the urgency of, like, you need to start walking, you need to start getting stronger because we're at war and you're vulnerable. So yeah, I'm really curious what Laris's plans are. Dylan says, should Rhaenyra have made some terms and conditions first? Like, you won't be made a legitimate Targaryen and will not be given property / your own noble house. Yeah, so in this episode, Jace raises some, like, very reasonable objections and some very logical objections. Like, hey, if we start giving dragons to random common people and bastards who we don't know who they are, what if these Targaryen bastards decide that they want to be king? Because the truth is that Jace is also a bastard. He's not even a Targaryen bastard. He's a Velaryon, supposedly, because he is claimed to be the son of Laenor Velaryon when he's actually the son of Harwin Strong. So arguably Jace is a strong bastard, not even a Targaryen bastard. The only thing Jace has going for him is that he has a dragon. And this is something that's emphasized in the books as well, that Jace wants to be a Targaryen dragon rider, because having a dragon is the one thing that really proves that I am my mother's son, I am a Targaryen, I am worthy of being the future king, because Jace is the heir to the throne. After Rhaenyra, Jace is meant to have the throne. So it is a threat, a political threat. If a bunch of other random bastards get dragons, what does Jace have that they don't? Other Targaryen bastards have blonde hair. Having blonde hair and having a dragon is like all you need to be a dragon king in the eyes of a lot of people. And bastards can be legitimized as well. So there's a lot of reasons why these dragon seeds are a political threat to Jace and could undermine Jace and could create a lot of problems for Jace. So it makes sense that he objects. But as Rhaenyra says, if they don't get more dragon riders, they will lose this war and they will probably be killed. So it makes a lot of... This is a really interesting conflict. In the books, it's Jace's idea to do the sowing of the seeds, though. It's a little bit different. Like, Jace is kind of pushing this. And Jace says in the books that anyone who claims a dragon will be made a lord, or will be made noble, at least. So they are, like, sort of setting some conditions to try and define, like, okay, if these bastards get dragons, what will their social status be? Because there's also this, like, class aspect to it. I think it's really interesting that Rhaenyra as well is really reluctant at first to let common-born small folk people have dragons, because that's a threat to this feudal order. The order of this world is that the nobility rule and the peasants obey. And as soon as you start letting peasants get powerful dragons, that's a threat to that order. And Rhaenyra eventually decides that, yeah, I'm going to change that order. And Mysaria helps her figure that out, because Mysaria is a common-born person. She brings a common perspective to Rhaenyra. But remember in Season 1, Rhaenys was talking about the order of things, and she was saying that men will never accept a female ruler, and young Rhaenyra said, I will make a new order. So it makes sense that Rhaenyra has already decided that she wants to change the system of power in this world with regards to gender. So it makes sense that she also considers changing the order of things with regards to class and, like, common-born people versus noble-born people. So, and yeah, this is just out of necessity. So it makes sense that she wants to change this order, but the question is, what is this new order going to be, and how messy is it going to be trying to alter the rules? Thanks for the donation from Rhaenyra with a steal something, who says, I think Larys is trying to undermine Aemond to see Aegon back on the throne, because Aegon is more easily manipulated. There's no path to higher power through Aemond. Yeah, I agree. I think that's like the simplest explanation of what Larys is up to. Larys has discovered that Aemond sees through his manipulations and won't listen to him. So Larys has decided that, yeah, the best way for Larys to have power is to focus on Aegon, not Aemond. So I guess Larys wants Aegon to get strong and to assert his authority. And, Larys could say, hey, Aegon, remove Aemond as regent. Like, King Aegon has the power to remove all of Aemon's power. Remains to be seen how they're going to deal with Aemon's dragon Vhagar, but King Aegon could remove Aemon's power and make Larys more powerful. So, yeah, I agree. That makes sense. It's also interesting that Larys is wearing fancier clothing. Like, look at these... Look at this robe that he's wearing and the jewelry and stuff. Like, I think Larys is enjoying the finer things and is enjoying having nice clothes. I remember previously this season, Larys said that, oh, Alicent, we must indulge our desires, So I get the sense that Larys is enjoying nice clothes, is enjoying having power, and wants more of it. And the path to get more of it is through Aegon. It's also interesting to see that Leon Estamont, one of Aegon's Kingsguard, has apparently died in the riot, whereas Red Ned Waters and Martin Rain survived the riot but have now been sent to the Wall. This has been a bad season for Kingsguard, my goodness. Rhaenyra's Kingsguard, Stefan Darklin, died last episode, so Rhaenyra only has one Kingsguard left, Laurent Marbrand, as far as we know. Whereas in the Greens, Aegon had 7 Kingsguard for a hot minute. But yeah, now Leon is dead and Martin and Ned have been sent to the Wall. I guess because they are incompetent and it's good to get rid of them. And they're being used as a scapegoat for the riot. Like Jasper and Larys say that, oh, Martin and Red Ned caused the riot. Which is absurd. Like, we didn't see them do anything to cause the riot. It's really more Larys and Jasper's fault that the riot happened because they failed to tend to the whispers and they failed to, win the propaganda war. And, this episode we see Alicent going camping with Rickard Thorne over here. So that's the Kingsguard situation. A lot of people are asking about Hugh's mother, so let's talk about that. So in this episode, Hugh reveals to his wife, Kat, that I am a Targaryen bastard. And he says that his mother was a sibling of Balon, the father of Daemon and Viserys. So the old king, remember Jaehaerys Targaryen, who we saw at the start of Season 1, Episode 1, he had a whole bunch of kids with Queen Alysanne, and they were a mixed bag. Remember in Season 1, Lionel Strong said that Jaehaerys had a lot of trouble with his daughters. Jaehaerys' daughters were a lot of trouble. Some of them were scaredy cats, some of them were rebellious, some of them were tomboys. And one in particular was Sarah Targaryen. She was a very rebellious kid, a little bit evil, a little bit manipulative. And when she was 16 years old, there was this huge sex scandal because Sarah had sex with a bunch of men, including a Beesbury, incidentally. Roxton Stinger Beesbury. And so Jaehaerys was furious, and there was this huge big scandal, and Jaehaerys privately said, Sarah is no longer my daughter, and it was this huge political headache. And Jaehaerys defeated and killed the Beesbury in a trial by combat. And then Sarah tried to steal a dragon, so Sarah was a pain in the ass, and King Jaehaerys sent Sarah to go and join a nunnery, to go and become a scepter, to live her life with the Faith of the Seven, to be a nun, basically. So then Sarah escaped from the nunnery, and she went east to the city of Lys, and she worked in a pleasure house as a sex worker in a brothel, and ultimately she became a quite rich and influential proprietor of a brothel in Volantis. So it's kind of this messed up story of the shitty gender roles where it's hard for a woman to rebel, and while men are allowed to have a bunch of bastards with sex workers, women aren't allowed the same freedom. It's a little bit like, Rhaenyra having sex and getting in a whole lot of trouble for it in Season 1. So, based on that information, I think it's reasonable to assume that Hugh's mother is Sarah Targaryen. Which I suppose makes the possibility that Hugh might be half Beesbury. I guess it's remotely possible that the father of Hugh is Roxton Beesbury the Stinger. I think Hugh would have to be about 45 years old for that to be true in the book timeline, at least. I don't know if Hugh is 45. I don't think he looks 45. It's probably more likely that he's the son of some random client of a brothel in Lee Silverlandis. But yeah, the point is that his mother is a Targaryen, so it makes sense that Hugh is able to claim a dragon. So that's who Sarah Targaryen is. And yeah, we also learned that Cat and Hugh's daughter is dead, which is pretty lame. There are some funny little other anecdotes about Sarah Targaryen, like rebellious pranks in the past. She once filled her sister's chamber pot with bees. She once dyed the cloaks of the King's Guard pink instead of white as a prank. She started stealing alcohol when she was 11 years old, and by the age of 12, she was often drunk when she was at church. So yeah, Sarah Targaryen was a handful. And yeah, my god, half Beesbury, half Targaryen would be something. When the bee and the dragon wed, let all the world beware, right? So, what else? We talked about this scene with Larys and Jasper. I thought it was really interesting that Jasper was sucking up to Larys. Like, Jasper says, hey, I heard that Seasmoke has a rider. That's important information. But how about you, Larys? How about Larys tell Aemond about Seasmoke? Like, why is Jasper giving this information to Larys instead of bringing it directly to Aemond? I guess Jasper might think that Larys is the one with the power here, and he wants to suck up to Larys to get Larys's approval. It's interesting that he doesn't bring it directly to Aemond. And it's funny that they talk about the Targaryen family being a shallow pool when they're talking about who the rider could possibly be, because Jasper assumes that Seasmoke's rider must be Rhaena Targaryen, since she's the only true-born, known, living adult Targaryen who doesn't already have a dragon. They completely ignore the possibility that a bastard might ride a dragon, so that's a blind spot for them. In the next scene, we're on Dragonstone, and Bartimaeus Celtigar continues to be very annoyed about random people seizing dragons. Because it's kind of all that Bartimaeus has got, is that Bartimaeus is a lord, he's highborn, and he's Valyrian. And as soon as random lowborn people start getting dragons, that's letting lowborn people be more powerful than he is. So the lords have a vested interest. And it's not just going to be Bartimaeus. Every lord in the realm might be annoyed at the idea of these bastard lowborn people rising up to have the power of dragons. It's a threat to the whole fabric of this society. It's a threat to the feudal order. So this whole sowing of the seeds thing could be very disruptive. But Rhaenyra says that it's ordained by the gods. And Mysaria, as we said, convinces Rhaenyra to consider Targaryen bastards, not just true-born noble people. And we get a little laugh from Mysaria, which is fun, an uncharacteristic laugh, when Mysaria suggests that you should look under the sheets and in the wood piles. So that's how she describes, Targaryen bastards. In the books, that's a line by Mushroom. Mushroom, the randy dwarf, is one of the historical sources of Fire and Blood, the book, and it's Mushroom who suggests that we go and look for bastards. But it makes sense that Mysaria would know about this, because Mysaria was a sex worker and Mysaria ran a brothel. And so she says that she's aware of no less than 80 Targaryen bastards, which is a lot. And they do talk about this in the books, on Dragonstone especially, where the Targaryens have lived for 230 years. The Targaryens have been having sex with lots of random common people and fathering lots of bastards, so there are plenty of bastards around, and it makes sense that Mysaria would know about them, because yeah, she's not only a brothel keeper, but a spy master. So it makes sense that she would know about all of these things. And in this scene, Rhaenyra does worry that this could impact Jace. She does say that, people have been saying that Jace is a bastard because he is a bastard, so if I raise up these other bastards, it's a problem. So Rhaenyra knows from the start that this is a threat to Jace. But she has to do it anyway. She feels like she has to betray her son in order to win this war, which I think is a really cool dynamic to introduce. Airborne says, could Mushroom claim a dragon? In the books, Mushroom does try to claim a dragon. There's a passage that talks about Mushroom trying to claim a dragon, and his pantaloons get set on fire, and so he runs around the castle yard and has to jump in a well. The whole sowing of the dragon seeds situation, getting these random people to ride dragons, it's a little bit different in the books. Like, in the books, it sounds like it takes place over, like, days and days, and it sounds a little more orderly in the books, you know, forming an orderly queue and everyone going out to find the dragons. But I like how in the show, it's just absolute chaos. Like, they've just sort of thrown these people into the dragon cage and, like, you know, have at 'em. Let's see what happens. And the result is just rampaging dragons and most of these people being eaten. I think the chaos of it is captured really well. But I suppose there are still unclaimed dragons out there. Like, there is still Cannibal, Grey Ghost, and Sheepstealer. Sheepstealer seems to be in the Vale, ? But the Cannibal and Grey Ghost are on Dragonstone, at least in the books. So there could be some more dragon claiming going on. And yeah, that could make Rhaenyra's advantage over the Greens even stronger. So we also have Corlys saying hi to Adam. I like this moment where Adam is standing in Dragonstone looking at this luxurious room. Because as a common-born bastard shipwright, Adam has never been inside some fancy castle. He's never seen this kind of luxury and this kind of wealth. So highlighting that class difference, I think, is really interesting. And so then Corlys comes in and chats to Adam, and it's like, this really could have been a moment for Corlys to say, like, hey, I'm your dad. I'm going to acknowledge that I'm your dad. I'm sorry for ignoring you your whole life. Like, there's a lot of really emotional stuff that Corlys could have done, but didn't. And that's got to hurt Adam. Like, inside the episode, the actors were saying that, yeah, this is a meaningful acknowledgement, but I feel like Corlys owes more to Adam, and it'll be interesting to see if Corlys gives Adam more acknowledgement or not. And yeah, it's also interesting with the dynamic where Corlys seems to like Alan more than he likes Adam, because Corlys made Alan his first mate, whereas Adam didn't. There is this later conversation where Corlys says, hey, Alan, you should try and claim a dragon too. And Corlys suggests that maybe Adam and Alan's mother has Targaryen blood. So it's interesting that Corlys says, hey, Alan, you should claim a dragon, but Alan decides not to. And that is a change from the books. I mean, maybe something will happen next episode. But in the books, Alan does try to claim a dragon, and the results are interesting. I suppose I shouldn't spoil it, because maybe it'll happen next episode. Thank you for the donation from Brittany, the intuitive cosmic wifey, who says, do we know who Ulf's mum is or father? Yeah, so previously Ulf claimed that he is the child of Balon the Brave. So that would make Ulf the bastard half-brother of Viserys and Daemon. That's what Ulf says. Chucky Boy says, where is Harold Westerling? Yeah, it's quite funny that Harold Westerling disappeared last season and still hasn't turned up. And that is a change, because in the books, Harold is dead. But in Hot D, Harold was just left the Green Council because he didn't want to be sent to get Rhaenyra killed. So Harold morally objected and stormed out and has been gone ever since. And I think it'll be funny if he turns up again, or if everyone's just forgotten about him and he's sitting on a beach in the Summer Isles, perhaps. So, we talked about Corlys and Adam, and now we're at Harrenhal in the Riverlands. I like how the area around Harrenhal, it looks like a blasted ruin. It looks like Mordor, you know? It looks like nothing can grow here. It reminds us of the brutality, the intensity of the burning of Harrenhal by Aegon and Balerion during Aegon's conquest. That was a really apocalyptic moment when Harrenhal was burned. And so we see the devastation that remains. And I like how Alice reminds us of that. Alice reminds us of the horrific power that was visited on Harrenhal, and the symbolic power about the folly of trying to live forever, the folly of oppressing others for your own legacy. And so it's the perfect location symbolically for Daemon to question whether he should be king, whether he should subject others to his power. So Oscar Tully is now the Lord Paramount of the Riverlands. Oscar Tully is in charge, and so he's kind of Daemon's only hope of getting the Riverlords in order. This is a really interesting shot with Daemon. Daemon being still for once. Daemon being thoughtful. Daemon being reflective, literally. He's thinking about who he is and who he really wants. After all of his crazy visions, after his ayahuasca dream therapy spiritual journey, he's questioning what kind of person he is and what he really wants. So it's interesting seeing Daemon attempting to change. And so he confronts Oscar, and remember previously, Daemon was really rude to Oscar. Daemon glibly suggested that Oscar should murder his beloved grandsire, Grover. And Oscar bravely stands up to this powerful prince and says, hey, you've made a mess, you need to fix this. And Oscar also points out that his own political situation is difficult. Oscar is officially and legally the ruler of the Riverlands, but these people may not respect him. And the Tullys have a pretty weak hold over the Riverlands. Like, they do say this season that, the Tullys are really respected, and the Tullys have ruled for centuries. But the Tullys have only been in charge of the Riverlands for the last 130 years. They were put there, they were raised up by Aegon the Conqueror because the Tullys helped Aegon and take over the Riverlords, because at the time the Riverlands was ruled by the Ironborn, by House Hoare from the Iron Islands. And yeah, the Tullys are not as powerful as the Blackwoods or the Brackens or the Freys. So Oscar himself is in this really delicate political situation where he's trying to assert his power as the new ruler of the Riverlands. But because of Daemon and Daemon's atrocities with Willem Blackwood against the Brackens, it's going to be really difficult. So I think Oscar wisely makes it Daemon's responsibility, puts the blame on Daemon and on Willem, and has Daemon execute Willem. So Daemon accepts this this talking to by Oscar, and I think the very fact that Daemon complies with this little kid's wishes shows a little bit of character change for Daemon. And they have this big meeting with the Riverlords under the shadow of the Weirwood. The Riverlords talk a lot about the old ways and the traditions of House Tully. They sound a bit like the North and the Northmen, because we do know a lot about the northern connection to the old gods and the northern sense of honor and justice. In the books, we don't know as much about what exactly the cultural history of the Riverlords is so much, and most of these houses follow the faith of the Seven, not the old gods. So it's a little mysterious to me what exactly they're talking about when they talk about the old ways of the Riverlands. But certainly all these noble lords are a fan of the idea of, justice and oaths and fealty. So that's what Oscar tries to talk about when he's saying that, well, my grandfather Grover swore to King Viserys that he would support Rhaenyra, so that's why we're going to support Rhaenyra and the Blacks. And it's got nothing to do with Daemon and Daemon's dragon Caraxes that is parked right next door. Because that's the other subtext here, is that if they don't all join Daemon, Daemon could murder them all with his dragon right now, It would have been cool if Caraxes was in the background of this scene somewhere, but I suppose in this scene they wanted Daemon to be a bit more vulnerable. Thanks for the donation from Bub Reho, who says, I was really impressed by Oscar Tully's maturity in the face of the Blackwood issue. Couldn't Daemon have sent Willem to the wall? Yeah, that is something that often happens. When someone is sentenced to death, sometimes they are then offered, hey, if you want, you can go to the wall instead of going to death. And that is especially something that happens in the North. But yeah, in this case, they do not give Willem the option. If Willem was smart, Willem should have said, hey, send me to the wall. I volunteer to go to the wall. I volunteer as tribute. Willem probably should have said that, and then maybe he would have gotten that option, just like Red Ned and Martin are sent to the wall this episode. So yeah, Daemon wants to put the unpleasantness behind him, and he wants to get all these people to forget about the atrocities that he committed with Willem. And Daemon is more polite than usual in these scenes. He offers condolences to Oscar. He says, well done to Oscar. It's Daemon is sort of doing the bare minimum in terms of being nice to people, which I think is more than he usually does. Oscar repeatedly says that I'm just a green boy. I don't know very much. I don't have much experience. Which reminds me of Daenerys in the books. In the books, Daenerys often says that I am but a young girl and I know little of war, but XYZ. She sort of talks herself down, but then she asserts herself, which is similar to what Oscar is doing. Daemon also says that it's in the deepest darkness that the dawn comes, which is rather poetic. So in terms of the houses that are here, we see House Piper, whose heraldry is a naked woman. We see House Mouton, whose heraldry is a red fish. We see House Mallister, who have a bird. We see House Darry, whose sigil is a ploughman. Blackwood with the tree and the ravens, and Bracken with the horse. So all the boys are here, and they're trying to rally them behind Daemon. I think it's impressive that Oscar really comes up and squares up to Daemon when Daemon threatens Oscar, and Oscar faces this dangerous Dragon Lord, which is a good way of making Oscar look strong. This whole thing is, it's political theater. Oscar, the purpose of this scene is for Oscar to convince the Riverlords that Oscar is a strong new leader who everyone should respect, and Oscar is making justice, because that's the job of the Lord. The job of the Lord in this realm is to bring justice and protection to the people who serve him. And when the Lord fails to bring justice and protection to the people, that's when the people tend to rise in rebellion and remove them. So I think Oscar is being very clever in how he's doing all this. Maybe Oscar learned this from his grandfather and from his father, from his parents. So yeah, Oscar ultimately says that you must execute Willem Blackwood for his crimes, and they do it. And Oscar could have instead said that Daemon must suffer for what happened, but he instead chooses Willem, because of course there's just no way that Daemon is going to be punished since he's too powerful. So I think it's smart of Oscar to say that, well, Willem is wholly responsible and he is who must die. I think this is meant to represent some big character growth for Daemon. But Willem Blackwood is not important to Daemon, really. Like, Willem Blackwood was a useful tool and a useful stooge, and now he's a useful scapegoat. So I don't think this moment necessarily represents a whole lot of character growth for Daemon. I think what's more significant for Daemon is when he has that vision with Viserys and the crown later on, in which Viserys asks Daemon, do you really want to be king? And I think that might be a moment where Daemon realizes that, no, I don't want to be king. The crown destroyed Viserys, and it would destroy me as well. So maybe this episode is when Daemon decides that he will support Rhaenyra. Thanks for the donation from Nuisance, who says that Willem's blood watered the roots of the weirwood. Yeah, in the north, the it's on a stump that Will gets executed in the Game of Thrones books. And I always wondered if that was like a weirwood stump. But yeah, Willem here is executed in front of a weirwood. And in the books, weirwoods are often given blood as a sacrifice. Some people have their entrails hung in the branches of the weirwood. So the idea that the old gods is this hardcore religion that requires blood sacrifice. In the books, Bran has these visions, and Bran has a vision of someone being executed at a weirwood tree, and the blood of the victim flows onto the weirwood roots, and then Bran, through his visions, through time and space, can taste the blood. So, Bran Stark might be tasting the blood of Willem Blackwood right now. And there's often the suggestion that sacrifice can bring magic power. So it's cool that, yeah, we are seeing Willem Blackwood as a kind of a sacrifice to the old gods right now. Just like later, we see all of those dragon seeds dying as a kind of a sacrifice to the dragons. A different kind of sacrifice to a different kind of power. So, yeah, magically that's interesting. Thanks for the donation from Pryon Ion, who says, I feel like Willem maybe knew that this would happen. I don't think that Willem knew that this would happen. I don't think he expected he was going to die. I thought he expected that Daemon was going to protect him. I mean, killing Willem Blackwood probably will make it harder for Daemon and the Blacks to control the Blackwoods. The Blackwoods are probably going to be cross that their lord is dead. Or maybe the Blackwoods hate Willem Blackwood. I mean, remember that Willem Blackwood is not even the proper lord of House Blackwood. Willem Blackwood is only the uncle of Benjicot Blackwood, who is the actual lord, but Benjicot is young, so Willem was ruling on his behalf. So I wonder, does Benjicot approve of what his uncle Willem has been doing vis-a-vis war crimes? Or is Benjicot a different kind of person who has different values? That'll be interesting to find out, because the Blackwoods are a powerful house. So it'll be interesting if relations with the Blackwoods are complicated by the execution of Willem. So then we have this scene where... we see Del the goat, by the way. That's pretty fun. Writer Sarah Hess says that this goat has a name that is Del the goat, and Sarah points out that there is... we've never seen Alice Rivers, the witch, and Del the goat in the same scene, so maybe Alice has the power to transform into Del the goat. Sarah said that she's not saying that Alice transforms into Del, but she's not saying that Alice doesn't transform into Del the goat. Alice could be a skin changer. Maybe such things are possible. JJ says that this episode was very dreamlike, the Riverlords scene. Yeah, when Daemon executed Willem, it was quite there was a weird vibe to it. There was a weird tone, the sort of big close-up on Daemon's face, and not actually seeing the sword go through Willem's neck. Daemon is like very in his own head here. He seems to be transitioning into the dream space, and there's this sort of time skip where suddenly he's inside. So Daemon is continuing to be sort of unstuck from time and continuing to be introspective. And that's when he has this vision of Viserys. Apparently it was the actor Paddy Considine's idea that he wanted to be in his full leprosy makeup for this scene. And so we're reminded of how all throughout Season 1, Viserys was slowly destroyed by the responsibility and the guilt and the weight of power of being the king on the Iron Throne. And so Viserys just sort of straight up tells Daemon, the throne is awful, you shouldn't want it. Do you want it still? And there's this like high keening sound, this high ringing keening sound, which was the same sound we heard when Daemon cut off young Rhaenyra's head in a previous vision and the crown clattered to the ground. I think they're using some really cool sound design to connect different scenes and connect different ideas. I also thought that the dragon's vocalizations, the dragon's roars and growls and breaths were fantastic in this episode. There was so much personality to each of the dragon sounds. So yeah, I think this might represent Daemon deciding that he doesn't want to be a king after all. So then, we see that Aegon is attempting to walk. Aegon was burned by Aemond at Rook's Rest in episode 4, and Larys and Orwyle are urging him to try and walk again, to become strong again, to assert his power again. Do you think Aegon will get control of the Greens? Do you think Aegon will get control of this war? Do you think that Aegon still wants to fight this war? Or do you think that after everything Aegon has been through, maybe he would just want to surrender to Rhaenyra? How is Aegon feeling? Like, what does Aegon want? It seems that at the moment Aegon is just too overwhelmed with pain and his physical hardship to be able to want anything more than that. But it'll be really interesting to see what kind of figure Aegon becomes. And so Larys urges that Aegon has to work hard. And Orwyle doesn't want to have to push Aegon this hard, but Larys says he must. I really enjoy, like, Orwyle is just trying to do his job. Orwyle is just trying to be a doctor. Orwyle is just trying to follow the Hippocratic Oath. He just wants to do no harm. He wants to do what's best for his patient. But there's a lot of irony that Orwyle, this great healer, his patient is Aegon, who is a pretty awful person and an awful king. It might be better for the world if Aegon didn't get better. But also Larys is trying to force Orwyle to force Aegon to get better quicker, and that is not in the best interests of his patient. While Aemond is telling Orwyle that Aegon should not heal quickly and to keep him on lots of drugs, to keep him on opium. So Orwyle is getting mixed messages. All he wants to do is medicine, but he's getting all these conflicting orders. And you also have to consider the idea of the Maesters not liking dragons and not liking Targaryens and not liking magic. There is a character in the main Game of Thrones books who says that the Maesters caused the Dance of the Dragons. The Maesters caused this war. In Season 1, we saw the Maester Melos conspiring with Otto, and it did feed this idea that maybe the Maesters are causing this war. Maybe the Maesters want to undermine the Targaryens and their dragons. They haven't really lent into that at all in this season, but it is an idea worth thinking about. Thanks for the donation from Koblack, who says, I didn't notice the phrase at the Riverlords meeting. Yeah, that's a good point. We saw the Blackwoods and Brackens and Mootons and Darries and Pipers, but we did not see the phrase. And the phrase are Riverlords, one of the more powerful Riverlords. You'd think that they should be there. I suppose that part of the issue might be that the twins are a bit further away than a lot of these other houses. Maybe that's what, because the twins are up in the north of the Riverlands. They're not as close to Harrenhal as the other houses, so that might be part of why they're not there. But we did see that the Freys pledged to support Jace and Rhaenyra and the Blacks, and the Freys have never gone against their word, and the Freys would never betray anyone, right? So I'm sure the Freys are fine. Thanks for the donation from Dirty Dan, who says, do you think we will ever meet Kermit and Elmo Tully? Yeah, in the books there are other Tullys called Kermit and Elmo, along with Oscar and Grover. So yes, they are named after Muppets from Sesame Street. I wonder if Hot D is not including those characters because Hot D is a bit embarrassed by the Muppets thing. But I don't know. I hope we get some little Easter eggs to at least acknowledge them. So thank you, Dirty Dan. So, yeah, it's interesting seeing Aegon beginning his slow recovery. I mean, I'm sure, I'm sure some people on some level could argue that, Aegon deserves to suffer, because Aegon raped Diana and possibly other people. Aegon has bastard children who he abandoned at a child fighting pit, and apparently he's a frequent attendee at a child fighting pit. We only got those glimpses of what Aegon gets up to, but it seems like Aegon may have done... who knows how many bastards he's got and abandoned? Who knows how many people he's assaulted? Aegon's a pretty bad person, and some people would argue that for those sorts of crimes one deserves to suffer. And Aegon most certainly is suffering. And I think these scenes can elicit a lot of sympathy as well, you know? I mean, that's one of the interesting things about this show, is that almost every character does terrible things, and... is also sympathetic at the same time. And that includes Rhaenyra. I really like that this episode, Rhaenyra has to face the fact that she put her son Jaehaerys, Jaceres, in a really terrible position. Because Jace is a bastard son of Harwin Strong. And it was a pretty terrible decision for Rhaenyra to have bastards with Harwin Strong, because having black-haired bastards that obviously aren't the children of her gay, pale-haired son, Laenor, that's a political threat. And that's part of why this war happened, is because Rhaenyra had these dark-haired bastards. So Jace accuses Rhaenyra of this mistake, the mistake of bringing Jace into existence. My God, it's a very personally and emotionally and politically fraught accusation. And I think that this show runs the risk of making Rhaenyra too morally good. Because all throughout this season, Rhaenyra has been saying, I don't want to cause a war, I want to save lives, we've got to give peace a chance. Whereas in the books, Rhaenyra's like, kill them all, I want to murder and torture Alicent, because the Greens killed my son Luke, and the Greens got my stillborn baby Visenya killed because they induced the early pregnancy, and now Rhaenys is dead and Meleys is dead. At this point in the book, Rhaenyra is really mad and really murderous, and I thought we were going to get some of that in Season 2, after that face that Rhaenyra pulled at the end of Season 1. I thought that Rhaenyra was going to go murder mode, but that has not happened as yet. Maybe it will happen in the future, but it hasn't happened yet. So I think the fact that Jace accuses Rhaenyra of hey, you did something wrong, I think is important. Because Rhaenyra is meant to be more... she's not meant to just be purely a good guy. Thanks for the super chat from Lena, who says, I haven't read Fire and Blood book, but I keep getting spoilers. If you were me, would you want to read the book before future seasons, or watch it unfold on screen? I think that it's fine either way. I think that reading the book Fire and Blood before watching the show, I think in some ways it will make the show more fun, but in other ways it might not. There are obviously surprises. If you haven't read the book, it is surprising and exciting to see the twists and the deaths and not knowing the ending. So I think it might be more fun to not read the book, because the book Fire and Blood is not like the main Game of Thrones books. The main Game of Thrones books are novels, and you get the perspective of each of the characters, and you get all the detail, you get the dialogue, you get the relationships. Whereas the book Fire and Blood is a Wikipedia summary. It's a very brief summary of... Jace said that they should claim some dragons, so then Hugh claimed Vermithor, and Ulf claimed Silverwing, and Mushroom got his pantaloons on fire, and then Corlys said that Adam is a cool guy. That literally is the level of detail in Fire and Blood. The entire season, House of the Dragon Season 2, It covers about 20 pages of the book so far. 20 pages for this entire season. So that's why, like, it's weird when people ask, did this happen in the book? Because the book only says the most important facts. It does not include the little details. So the show has to go off the book to show any detail at all. And it's always kind of ambiguous whether a change is really contradicting the books or if it's just saying something that was left out of the books. And there's also the historical inaccuracy built in. So I would probably recommend that you don't need to read the book. And yeah, on Alt-Shift-X, I'm not going to spoil future events in these live streams or in the videos. Because I think it's more fun to not know what's going to happen. And there is plenty to talk about just in the meat of the episodes themselves. Thank you for the donation from MR, who says, considering the mysterious bond between Dragon and Ryder, do you think that Viserys' leprosy started because of Balerion's death? I think that's a great idea, MR. I think that might be true. Because there is this idea that Targaryens don't get sick. Daenerys believes that Targaryens don't get sick, and a bunch of characters say it. It seems that the magical blood of the dragon protects you from illness. But a bunch of Targaryens have died of sickness. One of Jaehaerys' daughters died of grayscale. Some of King Daeron and his grandson, some of his relatives died of the spring sickness. So there have been a bunch of Targaryens who have died of sickness. But here's the thing. None of the Targaryens who have died of sickness had dragons. And when Jaehaerys' granddaughter, whose name I think was Daenerys, was dying of grayscale, Jaehaerys said, get her a dragon, get her a dragon. So it seems that Jaehaerys believed that having a dragon and having the bond with the fiery dragon protects you from sickness. So the fact that Viserys' dragon Balerion died, maybe not having a dragon made him vulnerable. And maybe that's why he got that leprosy disease and that's why he died. I agree. I think it's really intriguing, the relationship between Viserys and Balerion. I would love to know more about what that relationship was, because Viserys said that dragons are a dangerous power that we should not use, and the idea that we control the dragons is an illusion. What experiences did Viserys have with Balerion that convinced him that dragons are no good? So yeah, there is that in-world magical explanation of why Viserys got the sickness, but at the same time, there's also a more thematic explanation, which is that Viserys made bad choices, and the responsibility and the weight of the throne was more than he could handle, and so Viserys emotionally and physically crumbled under the weight of the political responsibility. I mean, you've probably seen pictures online of, like, real American presidents at the start of their 4-year term and at the end of their 4-year term. Real people age faster when they have vast political power, right? So this is a very real thing. Power really does age you, and we see that with Viserys. So, you know, I mean, Daemon looks a lot better than Viserys does, partly because Daemon has no responsibility. There's the greatest youth potion that there is. The best way to stay young is to have no responsibilities, apparently, because Viserys crumbled under it. Thanks for the donation from Melik, who says that Alinda Massey, the handmaiden, being in a red cloak, doing all this whispering in the streets, is definitely a sign to red priests in Westeros, right? And what she's doing can be perceived as creating a prophecy, like in Dune. But the red priests started in Essos. I think this is an interesting angle that you're thinking down, Melik. So in this episode, Rhaenyra and Mysaria send a message to Alinda Massey, and so Alinda goes around King's Landing recruiting dragon seeds, bastards of Targaryens, and Alinda spreads the word that, hey, Rhaenyra on Dragonstone wants dragon riders, so if you have Targaryen blood, come to Dragonstone and get a dragon, it's going to be great. I don't think that Alinda's red cloak is meant to represent the Lord of Light and the Red Priests. Like, remember in Game of Thrones, there was Melisandre, and there was everyone's favorite character, Kinvara, for those who remember Kinvara. And the Red Priests have this religion of fire, and they have these prophetic dreams, and Melisandre said that Stannis is the prince that was promised who's going to save the world. And I agree that, those ideas of destiny and fire are very similar to what Rhaenyra talks about with the dragon seeds claiming dragons, and also Rhaenyra's belief in Aegon's dream and the belief that the Targaryens are destined to save the world and unite Westeros. So I agree that there are similarities, and certainly those things are coming together in the main books. In the main books, a bunch of the Red Priests in Volantis declare that Daenerys is the chosen one, and Daenerys and her dragons will save the world. So the Red Priests are supporting the Targaryen dragon riders in the Game of Thrones books currently. In Hot D, we haven't seen any activity by the Red Priests because, the Red Priests mostly exist in Essos and in Volantis. But yeah, I mean, it would be cool if some Red Priests were in Westeros in this time. I mean, in Game of Thrones, like, Melisandre came to Westeros, and also Thoros came to Westeros, and it was unusual that these, like, missionaries from the east were here in Westeros trying to spread the word. This is Thoros. He was sent to try and convert King Robert Baratheon to the Lord of Light, which didn't end very well. Thoros wasn't a very good missionary. We've got a video about Thoros, actually, on Alt Shift X. Anyway, so, I think that the point of Alinda's red cloak is that it shows that she's a Targaryen and she's on Rhaenyra's side. I mean, Alinda is not a Targaryen, but she's like an emissary of Rhaenyra Targaryen who uses a red dragon, contrasting with Aegon and the Green's golden dragon. Of course, I think, like, realistically, it's very silly to go around with this conspicuous bright red cloak when you're on a secret mission, and Alinda could be caught and killed by the Greens if she's not careful, but symbolically it's about her representing Rhaenyra and gathering up the dragon seeds. And I do think it is also a bit hilarious and unrealistic that there's like 100 dragon seeds who all get together on the beach outside King's Landing, and they all get picked up by Alan's boats to go to Dragonstone. When Aemond ordered the gates shut, and, some of the City Watch gold cloaks are kind of on Mizaria's side. But how did all of these people sneak out of the gates? Like, what is Aemond doing? What are Larys and Jasper doing? Their security is so poor. Like, Rhaenyra snuck into the Grand Sept previously. Like there's all this coming and going in King's Landing, and it seems like the Greens are doing a shockingly bad job of security at King's Landing. I mean, they could have done this a little differently if they, highlighted dragon seeds coming from outside King's Landing, because there are dragon seeds on Dragonstone as well as King's Landing, and it's a lot easier for dragon seeds to come from Dragonstone than from King's Landing. Like, they didn't have to do this whole smuggling them across from King's Landing thing, except they had established that Ulf and Hugh were in King's Landing, so it's all a bit difficult logistically, I suppose. But I did find this a little bit unrealistic, wasn't it? Yeah, it was a bit of a Davos Seaworth smuggling Tyrion in broad daylight in Season 7, wasn't it? So, we talked about this scene between Corlys and Alan, where Corlys gets Alan to arrange this pickup with all the dragon seeds. And we talked about how Corlys suggested that maybe Adam and Alan's mother had Targaryen blood, and that explains why Adam can ride a dragon. And Corlys suggests that Alan should ride a dragon, but Alan declines because Alan says that I am of salt and sea. And you'll remember that Corlys's granddaughter Baela said that Driftmark and House Velaryon should pass to Salt and Sea. And there's this open question of who is Corlys's heir, who should rule House Velaryon after Corlys. So the fact that Alan says I am of Salt and Sea, it looks like it might make sense for Corlys to choose Alan as his heir, especially if Adam is off busy riding a dragon. In the books, Adam is older than Alan, so Adam would arguably have a better claim to Driftmark. And there is this small problem that Adam and Alan are bastards, which normally disqualifies you from being a lord. Kings can legitimize a bastard, so that might be one possible route. But yeah, the whole bastardy thing. I mean, it's interesting seeing it play out because, of course, in Game of Thrones, Jon Snow is a bastard, and we see how that excludes him from Winterfell, and that excludes him from, feeling like he's part of the family. And so a lot of the same dynamics are playing out with Adam and Alan, and could play out with Hugh and Ulf and other characters. Thank you, Leo, who says that it's interesting how Hugh is probably the only bastard who was raised and loved by their Targaryen parent. The casting and scene blocking for the pit scene made him look more regal than the others. Yeah, it was interesting to hear that Hugh was apparently raised by his mother, Sarah Targaryen, which raises the question of, where did Hugh grow up? Because in the books, at least, at this time, Sarah's living in the Free Cities in the east. She worked in Lys and then in Pentos. So I wonder if Hugh grew up in Lys or if Hugh grew up in Volantis and then he came across to King's Landing. I mean, it sounds like a really interesting relationship because, it does sound as though Sarah was loving and caring for Hugh, telling him that he was, no different to Viserys and Daemon, his cousins. But Hugh said that he was ashamed of Sarah, maybe because she was a sex worker, and maybe because she had, left her heritage and had left Westeros. So it's interesting seeing those complicated feelings about his mother. I mean, this continues to be House of Mummy issues, right? All these characters have complicated relationships with their parents. And so Hugh tried to sort of reject his Targaryen identity and just be a humble blacksmith instead. But now, he's choosing to stand up and embrace his regal Targaryen side of himself. So it's a really interesting identity thing, similar to Jon Snow. I guess there's the question of what would Hugh's name be, because acknowledged Targaryen bastards have bastard names like Waters or Snow or Sand or Hill. So I wonder if Hugh was born in Essos, what kind of bastard name does a bastard from Essos get? And is he even a Targaryen bastard, or is he a bastard of his father, Yeah, lots of interesting questions about bastard lore in here. Thanks, Woodle Diaper, who says, I feel like Ulf got off easy with claiming Silverwing after everything that happened with Vermithor. And Woodle Diaper misspells Silverwing as Silverwang. I think that it was a fun and deliberate contrast that Hugh bravely faced the dragon Vermithor to claim him, whereas Ulf cowardly ran away and accidentally stomped on a dragon egg and then was just completely disoriented. But then Silverwing kind of claimed Ulf, similar to how Seasmoke claimed Adam. And so it's this completely different situation where Ulf was not brave and badass and regal. He just stumbled into the situation. I wonder if Silverwing was like, well, Vermithor claimed Hugh, and Silverwing might sense that magically because the dragons have magic. And so maybe Silverwing's like, well, if Vermithor is practically Silverwing's husband, because Vermithor and Silverwing were written by King Jaehaerys and his wife, Queen Alysanne. So maybe Silverwing's like, well, if my husband Vermithor gets a rider, I guess I will too. This guy will do. Ulf, yeah, sure, he's the bastard of Balon Targaryen. Okay, fine, yeah, he can be my rider. That's kind of the vibe that I get. But it is interesting that, there is a different... Every dragon claim is different. So, whatever the rules are with, how much Targaryen blood do you need? Do dragons respect bravery? Do they respect regality and commanding people and authority? What exactly is the criteria here? Whatever the rules are, the dragons are also just individuals, and they have individual desires and personalities, and so it's not necessarily all about following set rules. I also enjoy the design of Silverwing. Silverwing has a very triangular head with these big pointy horns, and Silverwing also has these sounds, these vocalizations that are quite sort of trilling and high, so they're continuing to try and make all the dragons look different so that we can actually see the difference between all these dragons, because there are a lot of dragons in play right now, so we've got to be able to tell them all apart. Thank you for the donation from Maester Vagon for King, who says, do we think Otto is training Daeron, or scheming with Maesters, or raising bannermen, or just sulking? I think that all of those are possibilities. I think it's very funny that Otto has just disappeared. I think that last time we saw Otto, it really seemed as though Otto just wanted to not do politics anymore. Like, he was saying, I want to go home. Like, it sounds like he just wants to drink a cocktail on a beach. So maybe that's what Otto is doing right now. There's also the possibility that, like, what if he was kidnapped by the blacks and his enemies? Like, what if he's kidnapped by the Beesbreeze? What if he's dead? I don't know. There's a million possibilities. And they do seem to be going a little bit off book with Otto Hightower, which is interesting. I mean, Rhys Ifans is such a fantastic actor. I mean, one of the best scenes in this season was Otto's argument with Aegon. So I am hopeful and looking forward to more Otto action later on. Mr. Tucker says that with the Hugh and Ulf parentage reveal, I'm thinking that blood does play a role in bonding with the dragon. It's blood that the dragon is familiar with. Yeah, I mean, it does seem like every dragon rider at least has the possibility of having Targaryen blood. Like, Hugh is the son of Sarah Targaryen, Ulf is allegedly the son of Baelon Targaryen, Adam is the son of Corlys Velaryon, who might have some Targaryen blood through Valenna Velaryon's mother, and it is also vaguely possible that Adam's mother is a dragon seed. So it is at least plausible that there is Targaryen blood in all the dragon riders. But, like, the books as well do explore this idea that maybe it's bullshit and maybe you don't have to be a Targaryen. So, I mean, you know, the start of every episode starts with this shot of some kind of allegorical representation of the Valyrians creating a magic blood bond with the dragons. Like, I mean, there was a first time when a human rode a dragon. How did that happen? What magic was done that made it possible for the first human to ride the first dragon? Whatever that first time was, I wonder what it was, and I wonder if it could be recreated. That's one of the sort of central founding higher mysteries in this world that will be really interesting to explore. Thanks for the donation from Blastwave, who says, really loved the Dragon Keepers being apolitical. I thought it was cool and surprising and great that the Dragon Keepers rocked up and said, hey, Rhaenyra, don't let these random people ride dragons. The dragons are sacred. The dragons are the last spark of magic of Valyria in this sad world. I thought that was such a beautiful line. Like, the dragons are these destructive, terrible forces, but they also are beautiful, and they are wondrous, and they are precious. And so this Dragon Keeper is saying you should not be giving them out willy-nilly to random people, because that also could have, like, terrible, destructive consequences. The Dragon Keeper says that dragons are not playthings for the games of men, because it is dangerous to start handing out dragons to more people who might not understand how sacrosanct the dragons should be. We've already seen how dangerous it is when young Aemond gets on Vhagar, and when Aegon gets on Sunfire. A lot of destruction can happen, and if you just hand them out to more people and more factions who have no understanding of how to ride these dragons. Like, Aemond is a very, like, you know, for all his flaws, he is a very serious Targaryen prince who is trained and has knowledge and, you know, learned with the Dragon Keepers. And even Aemond struggled to control Vhagar and continues to struggle to control Vhagar at the end of this episode. What does Ulf know about dragon lore? What does Adam know about dragon lore? How are they going to control their dragons? If Aemon struggles to control Vhagar, how the hell is Ulf going to control Silverwing and Hugh control Vermithor? So I think the Dragon Keeper has very good points here. And I also love that the Dragon Keepers are finally expressing an opinion, you know? Because, like, up until now, the Dragon Keepers have been in the background. And the Dragon Keepers have kind of passively accepted the situation that they're in. Like, it was interesting, you know, the Dragon Keepers seem to be another sort of sworn order that are meant to be neutral. But it turns out it's kind of hard to be neutral when the royal family is fighting itself. And we saw the Kingsguard going through that. We saw that Harold Westerling and Eric and Arik, they struggled with the idea of how do we be neutral, how do we be apolitical when the royal family is split in two. And I think the Dragon Keepers are in this similar situation. They want to be neutral, but things are happening that are against their most central held beliefs. This stuff isn't in the books. Like, in the books, the Dragon Keepers are just guards. The Dragon Keepers are just these people who guard the dragon pit, and they have some sick dragon scale armor. And Ryan Condal on his podcast was saying that they changed the Dragon Keepers, mostly because they didn't have the budget to make a whole bunch of, like, cool Dragon Keeper armor sets. And so that eventually morphed into this idea of, like, what if the Dragon Keepers are these, like, cultists in robes who speak Valyrian and wear dragon glass blades and cut their own throats with them, like, and I think that was a really cool change. And apparently George R. R. Martin, the author, approved of that change as well. And so now finally seeing the Dragon Keepers actually take action based on their ideology, their religious and political ideology, I think is great and cool. And I wonder, you know, how much harder is it going to be for Rhaenyra and these new Dragon Riders if the Dragon Keepers are no longer participating? Thanks for the donation from Sarah, who says, do you think the Dragon Keepers are gone for good or just on strike? I hope they don't go switch sides and go and help the Greens. Yeah, I think that's a great question, Sarah. Like, it is going to be a problem if the Dragon Keepers leave, because it seems like the Dragon Keepers are responsible for not only guarding the dragons, but probably, like, feeding the dragons and scooping their poop, and who knows what else dragons need. They know which dragons like tummy rubs and which ones like neck scritches. Like, the dragons are very particular. Who's going to change the dragon's litter box if the Dragon Keepers have all left? It could be a big problem. Also, the Dragon Keepers know the dragons better than anyone. It says that in the books, that the Dragon Keepers know the personalities and the needs of the dragons. So it's going to be really hard to deal with the dragons and to train these new Dragon Riders, Adam, Hugh, and Ulf, without the knowledge of the Dragon Keepers. So, again, this is a consequence of Rhaenyra's actions. I mean, this whole season has been about Alicent suffering consequences of her bad choices. In terms of, like, helping to crown Aegon and her relationships with her kids, etc. I like that this episode brings some consequences to Rhaenyra, because Rhaenyra knows that she's doing, like, a ballsy, dangerous thing by letting bastards claim dragons. And I like how it has the consequence of the Dragon Keepers turning against her. I like how it has the consequence of Jace turning against her. I like how it brings her on with these uncertain new allies, Adam, Hugh, and Ulf. I think it's really good and important that we are questioning Rhaenyra's choices. Thank you for the super chat from Manga Theatre, who says, maybe dragons choose their riders off a mix of Valyrian blood and vibes. Hugh got chosen for his courage, and Silverwing chose Ulf because Silverwing likes silly dudes. I agree, Manga Theatre. I think that dragons choose riders based on a mix of blood and vibes. I think that's legit. Jack says that Harold Westerling, where is he? I keep seeing him in the Kingsguard section looking neutral. Yeah, we don't know where Harold is. We haven't seen him since Season 1. He could be anywhere. We need to close some windows, my goodness. Kingsguard. Yeah. Likiri says, Hugh says that Viserys and Daemon are his brothers. Sounds like his mum was a Targ bastard, not a legit Targ. No, I think that Hugh's line was that his mother said that her brother's sons, Viserys and Daemon, are no different to Hugh. Yeah, Hugh says, I was no different to her brother's boys. So his mother, Sarah, her brother, Balon's boys, Viserys and Daemon. So Viserys and Daemon are Hugh's cousins. I think that's the family tree situation. Thanks for the donation from Nymeria is Dario confirmed, who says, are you bringing back a spoiler corner of some kind? I have so many questions about how you think they could be setting up future events, and if certain things could be foreshadowing. Yeah, we have not done a spoiler talk corner. We might do one in future. I've thought that we might do a live stream the week after the finale live stream, because next week is the episode finale live stream, and then maybe a week after that, same time, same place, we will do like a final season wrap-up type live stream, and maybe at the end of that we can do a spoiler corner. I mean, yeah, it would be interesting to talk about spoilers and like thinking about what's coming next based on the books. But for now, we've got plenty to talk about in the episode itself, so we're not going to spoil anything right now. So, MF says, do you think any of the canon changes for the show piss off George Martin? George Martin has mostly said positive things about House of the Dragon on his blog. Like, he was very complimentary of Viserys, he was complimentary of Helena, he was complimentary of Blood and Cheese, and the first 2 episodes. George recently blogged that his dragons in the books would not go from Dragonstone to the Vale, and so it seems to me that George Martin is a bit unhappy with this plotline where Rhaena is off looking for a dragon in the Vale, because that's not in the books, and that could be a fairly large change to the books, depending on where that goes. So, based on what George Martin has published, George Martin has mostly been positive about Hot D, but yeah, he does seem to be subtly unhappy about the Vale dragon plotline. Alright, so we talked about... What did we talk about? Yeah, let's talk about Rhaena and the Vale while we're there. So, Rhaena Targaryen is meant to be going to Pentos. So there is kind of a confusing situation. So remember that Rhaenyra Targaryen, she has these kids, Joffrey Velaryon, who is the child of Harwin Strong, supposedly child of Laenor, but actually the child of Harwin Strong. So Joffrey Velaryon, and then Rhaenyra has 2 sons with Daemon, Aegon Targaryen the Younger, and Viserys Targaryen. Yes, it's another Aegon Targaryen, it's another Viserys Targaryen. It's confusing. But these 3 kids, Joffrey, Aegon, and Viserys, Rhaenyra has decided that she wants them to be safe away from the war, because, you know, Jaehaerys, the little kid Jaehaerys, got murdered, and, you know, Arik tried to kill her, so she wants to send her youngest children away to safety. So Rhaenyra sent Rhaena Targaryen, the child of Daemon and Laena, to go to the Vale. So the Vale is ruled by Jane Arryn, and the Eyrie is one of the safest places in Westeros, hopefully. So the plan is that Joffrey and Joffrey's young dragon Tyraxes, who we have not seen yet, are going to stay in the Eyrie with Jane Arryn. But now Aegon and Viserys and Aegon's little dragon Stormcloud, the little baby hatchling that we saw last episode, are going to go to Pentos, because that fella Reggio Horatus has agreed to host Aegon and Viserys and Stormcloud. So that is where Aegon and Viserys and Stormcloud are going, and it's meant to be where Rhaena also is going. However, Rhaena decides to walk off. She decides to walk away. I think it's very funny that nobody notices or cares that Rhaena Targaryen is just walking away. Jane said that she would send 6 of her men to guard the Targaryen princes and Rhaena, but none of those guards seem to notice or care that Rhaena walks away, which I suppose fits with, you know, part of the point of Rhaena's character is that she feels like she's ignored. She feels like she's unappreciated. She feels like everyone thinks she's pathetic because she doesn't have a dragon. So I guess that's part of why they just let her wander off. So clearly Rhaena is trying to find that dragon that's in the Vale, and generally just trying to find a purpose for herself. She's a Targaryen. She's blood and fire. She doesn't just want to be the babysitter. So yeah, that seems to be what's going on. And the dragon in the Vale is probably the dragon that's called Sheep Stealer in the books, because it likes to steal sheep. And yeah, that is a change from the books. So we shall see where that goes. Sully says, wouldn't it be cool if there was a list for every dragon and who its previous riders were? I mean, we can do a little bit of that. So how about we do a quick dragon corner, shall we? So here are all of the dragons that are currently alive in Hot D. Syrax is ridden by Rhaenyra. Syrax has only been ridden by Rhaenyra, so Syrax is one of the younger dragons. Daemon rides the dragon Caraxes, who was previously ridden by Aemon Targaryen, who was the father of Rhaenys Targaryen. Jace rides the dragon Vermax, who has only ever been ridden by Jace, very young dragon. Moondancer has only been ridden by Baela, very young dragon. Tyraxes is bonded to Joffrey. In the books at this point, Tyraxes is large enough to ride, and Joffrey in the books is quite keen to join the war, but Rhaenyra convinces Joffrey to stay in the Vale. Stormcloud, little baby, bonded to Aegon. So Vermithor was ridden by Jaehaerys Targaryen and was only ever ridden by Jaehaerys Targaryen, so Hugh is its second rider. Vermithor was living in a mostly peaceful time with King Jaehaerys. Vermithor was involved in one short war called the Fourth Dornish War, in which Vermithor and some other dragons burned a whole bunch of Dornish people. That's about it. So Vermithor doesn't have the same experience of battle that Vhagar has, Aemon's dragon. Silverwing was ridden by Alysanne. Silverwing, I don't think, has ever been in a fight. Silverwing didn't even join in on the Fourth Dornish War. So I don't think Silverwing has any experience of battle off the top of my head. Silverwing has been around, though. Like, Silverwing went to the north and visited the Wall in the books and in the show. That was mentioned in episode 1. Seasmoke was ridden by Laenor Velaryon, Rhaenyra's ex-husband. Seasmoke fought in the Stepstones, so Seasmoke does have some battle experience. We saw a bit of that in season 1. And so now Seasmoke is ridden by Adam. The cannibal is mysterious. No one quite knows where the cannibal came from. Some people claim that the cannibal existed in Westeros before the Targaryens did, which is probably untrue. That would make the cannibal like the biggest and oldest dragon in the world, and that doesn't seem to be true, but the cannibal is powerful and mysterious, and it eats other dragons, so it's scary. I wonder if anyone will be brave enough to try and claim the cannibal. Grey Ghost is elusive, likes to eat fish. We don't know much about its history. Sheepstealer is brown, likes to eat sheep. We don't know much about it. Sunfire has only ever ridden Aegon. Aegon rides Sunfire, rather. Vhagar was previously ridden by Balon, wasn't he? Let me double check that. Yeah, Vhagar was ridden by... first by Queen Visenya Targaryen in Aegon's Conquest, and that's why Vhagar has all this experience of war. And then Vhagar was ridden by, Balon Targaryen, the father of Viserys and Daemon. And then Vhagar was ridden by Laenor Velaryon. We saw her in season 1. Vhagar ended up burning Laenor, suicide by dragon. And now Aemond rides Vhagar. So Vhagar has had many riders, unlike most of these dragons. And Dreamfire has only been ridden by Helena, and Tessarion is now ridden by Daeron. So most of these dragons have only been ridden by 1 or 2 dragon riders. It's really only Vhagar that has that really long history. And Vermithor and Silverwing, Jaehaerys and Alysanne. Command Z says, please check the family tree. I think all the new riders are directly or closely related to their dragon's former riders. Well, yeah, I suppose that's true, because Vermithor was ridden by Jaehaerys, and Hugh is a grandson of Jaehaerys. Yes. Ulf claims to be another grandson of Jaehaerys through Balon, and is now... Ulf is a grandson of Queen Alysanne, and Silverwing was Queen Alysanne's dragon. Yeah, that's true. And Seasmoke is Laenor's former dragon, and now Laenor's half-brother, Adam, is riding Seasmoke. So you're right. All of the new dragon riders are relatives of their dragon's former riders. But that's not necessarily always how it works, because we saw how, Vhagar accepted Laenor after previously being ridden by Balon. And so, it doesn't always necessarily follow the family line. I mean, that's part of why Rhaena and Baelor were outraged when Aemond took Vhagar. So, dragon claiming doesn't necessarily follow the family tree, but you're right, all of these new dragon riders are related to the dragon's previous riders. Thanks for the donation from Ryan Yags, who says, last episode, Jace told Rhaenyra to gather the bastards and teach them to ride, and this episode, he seemed mad. Yeah, the difference is that last episode, Jace was saying, hey, let's find some other noble highborn people and get them to ride dragons. Noble highborn people who are related to the Targaryens, such as Steffon Darklyn. They made a point of saying that Steffon Darklyn is noble-born. He's from House Darklyn. It's different that Rhaenyra is now deciding to get bastards to ride dragons. And the reason why Jace is angry about that is because Jace himself is secretly a bastard, and if other bastards get dragons, that makes him less special, and that's important for his political legitimacy. Jace is Rhaenyra's heir, and he needs people to believe that he is true and legit. And if he's not the only one with a dragon, and if he has dark hair, unlike those silver-haired bastards, that makes Jace look like less of a legit Targaryen dragon rider. So that's the difference. Jace wanted them to only accept true-born people, and preferably like not like Targaryen bastards, but like, Darkland bastards, Darkland, true-born, highborn, Darkland people, Bar Emmons and Celtigars and such, who may have intermarried with the Targaryens in the past. He's angry about the bastard thing, because we saw in season 1 that Jace was like heartbroken about being a bastard and not being acknowledged, similar to Adam and Alan. And so when Harwin left, the last time that Jace saw his father, Jace asked, "Am I a bastard? Tell me the truth." And Rhaenyra did not tell her the truth. So I think it's really cool that Jace is confronting Rhaenyra over that, finally. Thanks for the super chat from Manna, who says that, of course, the dragons choose people who are related. Everyone is related in this family. Yeah, you're right. I mean, the family tree is very narrow because of all the incest. So, yeah, I mean, they're all related to each other by some degree. Enzonia says, do you think there's any chance that Ulf isn't a Targaryen bastard? It seems like they were hinting earlier that he was bullshitting. Who's to say that having the right blood is essential? Yeah, there is some uncertainty there, I agree. I mean, I don't think that Hugh is lying when he says that his mother was a Targaryen who worked in a brothel. Like, I mean, and I don't, like, if it is Sarah Targaryen, I mean, Sarah Targaryen is well known. It's well known that Sarah lived in the East and worked at a brothel, so I think that it is almost certainly true that Hugh really is the son of Sarah Targaryen. But yeah, I mean, all of this parentage can be questioned for sure. Lotus says, now that I think about it, Vhagar's battle experience with Visenya might explain Vhagar's sneak attack moves. Yeah, so you know how, like, a dog, like a really big dog, sometimes still thinks that it's still a puppy? And sometimes a big dog will try and, like, jump in your lap because the big dog thinks that it's still a tiny puppy dog. Maybe Vhagar is like that. Maybe Vhagar still feels like she is a little small, nimble dragon, and so she behaves like a small, nimble dragon, trying to do little sneak attacks, hiding behind Rook's Rest, when in actual fact Vhagar is enormous, but hasn't quite adjusted to that. Maybe that is what's going on. What haven't we talked about? So we talked about Rhaena in the Vale. Let's talk about Alicent's hiking adventure. Alicent is like, well, I have no political power. I am unemployed. I'm a single unemployed woman. Let's go hiking. So she goes out with the Kingsguard Rickard Thorne, and this is all very reminiscent of Rhaenyra's camping adventure with Criston. Remember in Season 1, Episode 3, when Rhaenyra and Criston went off to the woods, and Criston was like, I don't want to do my job. I want to hang out, and you're going to look after me, and we're going to chill in the woods. And then she got attacked by a boar. The very similar energy with Alicent now. So, like, Alicent is sort of following in Rhaenyra's footsteps. It's very funny that Alicent had been angry at Rhaenyra for having forbidden sex and running off in the woods instead of doing her duty for all those years. And now Alicent is doing the same thing and realizing that it's rather fun, and maybe she should have been doing this from the start. I mean, it's not all fun and games though. Like, Alicent is pretty morose and depressed for most of these scenes. And she swims out into this lake, and the showrunner Ryan Condal said that Alicent might have been contemplating suicide on some level. But ultimately decides not to and finds some kind of purpose. She looks up and sees that bird, sees life, sees possibility, sees freedom perhaps, and decides to live. So I wonder what Alicent's goal is now. But, this imagery, it's all very beautiful. It's rather like a music video. I think it's fun that they interrupt the, CGI dragon shenanigans to spend a little bit of time in peace and quiet and humanity and a moment of peace before the carnage. And all of the peaceful water imagery contrasts with, like, the fire and destruction that we see later on. I think it's a really nice counterpoint. And the water imagery connects with the feeling of wanting to be clean, because Alicent sees that rat and says that, here in the Red Keep, nothing is clean. I think Alicent seeks cleansing, she seeks absolution, she seeks atonement. That fits with all of her religious ideas with the Faith of the Seven. So I think Alicent is trying to cleanse herself of her mistakes and her sins, and trying to figure out what kind of a future she wants. Thanks for the donation from Jess K, who says that Alicent was ready to die because she sensed that Rhaenyra kissed a woman that isn't her. Yeah, maybe that is why Alicent decides to live, is that she wants to make out with Rhaenyra. Koblack says, why did the Dragon Keepers call the Dragon Seeds Andals? So, yeah, there's a few different ethnic groups of people in Westeros. The first group of people was the First Men. And so the First Men were the first humans in Westeros. They came and they had a bit of a war with the Children of the Forest. And that was a whole kerfuffle, and then they made peace with the Children of the Forest. And then the Andals came. And the Andals came from Andalos in the east. And they were blonde and blue-eyed and white, and they brought the religion of the Faith of the Seven. And so the Andals took over most of Westeros. They killed a bunch of the First Men. They also intermarried with a bunch of the First Men. So now most of Westeros is a sort of an ethnic blend between the First Men and the Andals, except in the north, the Northerners rejected and fought back against the Andals pretty well, and so the north is mostly First Men still. There's also the ethnic group that Nymeria brought over, from the Rhoynar to Dorne, and so Dorne has some of the Rhoynar blood in there. There's a bit more ethnic diversity in Dorne. And then another ethnic group was the Valyrians, who came from Valyria, and so that's the Targaryens and the Velaryons and the Celtigars. So I think what the Dragon Keepers are saying, that hey, the only people who should be riding dragons are Targaryen dragon lords, which, more loosely, that's Valyrian people. And they don't think that Andals should be riding dragons. They don't think that First Men should be riding dragons because they're not Targaryen dragon lords. And Steffon Darklyn may have been 1/16th Targaryen, but Steffon was mostly Darklyn blood, presumably, mostly Andal blood or First Men blood. So that's why the Dragon Keepers are angry. They want only Valyrian Targaryen dragon lords, not Andal First Men randos. And, it highlights the fact that these Targaryens and these Dragon Keepers, they're racist. They believe that some races, some blood is superior to others. They believe that the Valyrian dragon-riding blood is superior, and that's why the Targaryens have been intermarrying with themselves and with other Valyrians, is that they think themselves superior. So, if you think that the Targaryens are good guys, we should interrogate that a little bit, because they believe in their own racial superiority, and we see how that leads to atrocity, and we see how that leads to all manner of awful things happening. So, and of course, the Valyrian Empire itself was an empire built on slavery and oppression and atrocity and slaves who were worked to death in the 14 Flames. So the Valyrians and the Targaryens are proud of their Valyrian heritage, but it was an evil legacy, and I think the books explore that as well, and I think the books will explore that more, is that just because you have Targaryen blood doesn't really mean that you're better than other people or more deserving than other people. And that's why it's really interesting that we're getting all of these non-Targaryen, non-highborn people riding dragons. That really questions that idea of Valyrian supremacy. So, Alicent has her little music video in the lake, and it's pretty great. And then Jace confronts Rhaenyra. And so, as we said, Jace was fine with noble-born people claiming dragons, but he doesn't want bastards claiming dragons because he, after all, is just a bastard on a dragon. Jace says that Steffon Darklyn was the heir to the Dun Fort, which is not true because Steffon joined the Kingsguard, which means that he gave up his claim on House Darklyn, but whatever. So, it's a nice emotional clash between Jace and Rhaenyra, and Rhaenyra lays out the stakes. Thousands of people will die in this war. Rhaenyra does emphasize that she doesn't want these new dragon riders to go to war. Ideally, she wants to use her dragon advantage to force the Greens to surrender. I mean, look how many goddamn dragons they have. The Blacks have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 dragons with riders now. The Greens only have 4, and Sunfire is super badly wounded and could die any minute. And we've never even seen Dreamfire ride. So it's basically just... and, you know, Tessarion is still over in Old Town. So it seems like if right now the Blacks got on their 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 dragons and just flew to King's Landing, they probably could take down Vhagar and win the war right now. So that's what... So Rhaenyra is hoping that the Greens will now surrender to her. So yeah, Rhaenyra is saying, well, I know that this is politically and emotionally uncomfortable for you, Jace, but we need more dragons, so we're going to put some bastards on some dragons. It's what we've got to do. I think it's unfortunate that Rhaenyra kind of laughs at Jace a little bit here, saying that, oh, well, Jace, your dragon is so tiny. Your dragon Vermax couldn't possibly fight Vhagar. And I think it's unfortunate that she sort of laughs at her son here, because that, you know, is a bit hurtful. But yeah, Jace does make this very logical argument that, like, his legitimacy is undermined if he's, if there are other Targaryen bastards running around when Jace is basically the same thing. And it's, the consequence of Rhaenyra's bad choice of having sex with Harwin Strong. And so, Rhaenyra makes multiple sacrifices to get these dragon riders. She gets a bunch of people killed, a bunch of would-be dragon riders killed, and she also really pisses off Jace. And it's important that this scene happens before the sowing of the seeds. Jace is saying, hey, you're making a choice here. You're choosing me, or you're choosing your new dragon riders. And Rhaenyra chose her new dragon riders. So we were talking about, like, the ethnicities in Westeros, and Victoria asks, are the Dragon Keepers Valyrian? What is their ethnic background? And yeah, I think that's a really cool question, because, like, the Dragon Keepers speak Valyrian, and we might speculate that they came from Valyria along with the Velaryons and the Celtigars, and, you know, maybe they've even intermarried with the Targaryens, who knows? I think it would be cool if the Dragon Keepers might be Valyrian or have Valyrian blood. Either that, or they might, like, be recruited from other random people, and they are, like, inducted into the Order. I think Ryan Condal said that, you know, Dragon Keepers speak the common tongue, but, like, eventually they only speak Valyrian, which kind of sounds like they are inducted into the Order of the Dragon Keepers. Yeah, I think that's a really interesting open question, is, like, where exactly did the Dragon Keepers come from? What is their deal? It would be cool if we learn a little bit more. Thanks, Juniper, who suggests that the bird flying over Alicent in the lake might be Laris. Maybe it's Alice. Yeah, I don't know. Birds can be skin changed by skin changes, so maybe Laris is keeping an eye on Alicent. I doubt that's what they're going for, but who knows. So, yeah, I thought this was a cool scene between Jace and Rhaenyra. And Rhaenyra, again, talks about destiny. She says, I cannot gainsay what the gods have laid before me. I think it's an interesting question. Like, what gods are Rhaenyra talking about? I don't think Rhaenyra believes in the gods of the Faith of the Seven. They talk about the dragons being gods. So it's like, is the will of the dragons itself the will of the gods? It's a bit scary if you are seeing the dragons as gods, because the dragons do terrible, violent things. I mean, does Rhaenyra remember when the dragon Vhagar ate her son Luke? Like, if dragons are gods, then the will of the gods is not a good thing sometimes, you know? So is Rhaenyra just appealing to a more general, vague sense of destiny? I mean, in Valyria, they did worship various gods, but the Valyrians also considered themselves to be like gods, so they weren't really subservient to the gods. Like, who is God in Rhaenyra's mind? They seem to be just appealing to a general, vague sense of destiny. And we shall see where that sense of destiny leads. We saw in Game of Thrones that that Daenerys believed in her own destiny. She talked about her destiny to take the throne, and that led her to atrocity. So, where will destiny lead in House of the Dragon? Thanks for the super chat from Nathaniel, who says, Corlys mentioned that his bloodline doesn't have dragon riders, but haven't the Velaryons and the Targaryens been breeding within each other for many generations at this point? So in the books, the Velaryons and the Targaryens have intermarried a bunch of times. So Aegon Targaryen's grandparents were a Velaryon and a Targaryen who married each other. King Jaehaerys' parents were a Targaryen and a Velaryon, and of course, Rhaenys Targaryen married Corlys Velaryon. So yeah, in the books, there has been a lot of intermarriage between the Valerians and the Targaryens. I don't know if that's the case in Hot D. Because, like, in Hot D, it seems as though all of the Valerians are black. And if the Valerians are all black, then Jaehaerys's mother was black, and Aegon's mother was black, so, like, why are all these Targaryens white? Like, the fact that the Targaryens and the Valerians look different in Hot D makes me think that maybe the Targaryens and the Valerians haven't intermarried, or haven't intermarried as much in Hot D. So I don't know what the history is in Hot D. They haven't said. So it's unclear. I mean, it's also unclear in the books if, say, Corlys has any Targaryen blood, because there is this, like there is this one example where the Valerians might have gotten some Targaryen blood in the Valerian name through the parents of Valenna, but we don't know if they are the ancestors of Corlys. So in the books as well, it is unclear, it is unknown whether Corlys has Targaryen blood. And if he does, it's probably a really small amount of Targaryen blood. You would think that if they had enough Targaryen blood, then, you know, Corlys himself might have a dragon, you know? So it's all very unclear, but at least in the books and the show, it seems that Valerians did not have any significant amount of Targaryen blood and didn't have the ability to ride dragons, at least until the marriage of Corlys to Rhaenys Targaryen. Alright, what's next? So, the sense of destiny that pushes Rhaenyra to go against her son's wishes. I mean, Jace has been really dutiful to Rhaenyra, right? I think Jace is feeling like he has done a lot for Rhaenyra. Jace successfully got Lady Jane Arryn and Lord Cregan Stark and the twins to support Rhaenyra. Jace has been mostly pretty obedient to Rhaenyra. Jace has wanted to fly to war, but he has obeyed Rhaenyra and not flown to war. Jace has been trying really hard to be a good, obedient son to Rhaenyra, despite the fact that Rhaenyra has put him in this really awkward position of being a bastard with dark hair and having to pretend to be noble-born. And so Jace, I think, feels really betrayed, because this is like the first time he's really asked Rhaenyra to do something for him. The one time that Jace says, hey, this is really important to me, don't put bastards on dragons, she does it anyway. And Rhaenyra could have tried to get noble-born dragon riders. Like, it's not like Rhaenyra's only option was to get these bastards to ride dragons. As Rhaenyra said, like, there could be other noble-born families with some Targaryen blood if she searched the annals for long enough. But Rhaenyra went with the bastards instead. So, yeah, it is a really tricky choice, and it hurts Jace, and I think that's some good drama. So, Mysaria gives the message to Alan, because Alan is bringing this message to Alinda Massey, who is spreading the word in King's Landing to recruit dragon seeds. So we see that message pass to some fish smuggler. Remember last episode, Alicent had a fish thrown in her face, the queen of fishes. That gets smuggled inside along with the message, gets taken to Alinda. So I guess this message says, hey, Alinda, gather up all of these people who, you know, Mysaria knows a bunch of people who are Targaryen bastards. So gather them up and tell them to get picked up by Alan to be taken over to Dragonstone to recruit some dragon riders. And it makes sense that, you know, Alinda knows the people who work at King's Landing. Like, there's probably some interplay between the handmaidens of the Red Keep and the handmaidens of the Dragonstone. And so she spreads the word, and somehow Larys doesn't notice. I feel like it's ridiculous that Larys, the Master of Whisperers, and Jasper and Aemond fail to notice and fail to stop this whole operation happening right under their noses, but that's what happens. And clearly it helps that the Gold Cloaks, at least some of the Gold Cloaks, seem to be loyal to Mysaria and loyal to Daemon, so maybe that's part of what's going on here. And then we see Ulf with his drinking buddies. The subtitles indicate that some of Ulf's friends here, their names are Muja and Clay. Muja sounds to me like a Summer Islander name. The Summer Isles are like sort of southwest of Westeros or south of Westeros. And there are a few Summer Islander people with dark skin in Westeros in the books. So that's something that is a nice little connection, having like a Summer Islander name. And so his friends are saying, hey, Ulf, you should totally go and claim a dragon because you're a Targaryen bastard, right? And Ulf is like, maybe not. Maybe I shouldn't. And that makes me wonder if, like, how confident Ulf is that he's a Targaryen bastard. He tries to make all these excuses like, oh, my leg is hurt, etc. But ultimately, Ulf gets peer pressured into mounting a nuclear lizard, which I find quite funny. That they also mentioned the Hour of the Bat, because in the Game of Thrones world, there are names for the various hours of nighttime. Hour of the Wolf, Hour of the Bat, etc., which is cute. It's nice that they're including that. So, yeah, Ulf gets peer pressured, and he ultimately decides to go to Dragonstone to claim a dragon. So I really like how these circumstances are so different to Hugh. Because, like, Hugh's wife, Kat, is saying, don't go claim a dragon. I don't want you to die. Come with me to Tumblestone. But Hugh is like, no, I must act. I must claim a dragon. Whereas Ulf is being bullied into claiming a dragon. So I like the contrast. Captain Julia says that Rhaenyra not attending the Black Council at this time to clarify the sea smoke situation grows her showing irresponsibility, which is probably angering Jace, and showing Myzaria's growing influence. Yeah, that's a good point, is that there was this moment where the Black Council is going, oh, apparently there's a dragon, and so the council is like, okay, is Rhaenyra gonna come and tell us who the hell this person is? And Gerardus says, nope, she's not coming to the council today. Which is like, hang on. The queen is not explaining the new dragon rider? She's talking to Mysaria instead? Like, it makes sense that Rhaenyra doesn't want to deal with the council because the council and, like, Bartimaeus have been very unhelpful to her. But she needs her people to be informed of what's going on, right? And we see Jace being frustrated with that. We see Bartimaeus being frustrated with that. And also, like, Corlys is now the hand to Rhaenyra. How can Corlys be Rhaenyra's executive? How can Corlys rule in Rhaenyra's name if she's not going to keep him informed? What's the point of making Corlys the hand if she's not going to be a part of what's going on and, like, give Corlys information? So, yeah, I agree that Rhaenyra doesn't seem to be fulfilling her responsibility as the queen right here. And that's partly because she's been so exasperated by her council, but I agree that it's a mistake by Rhaenyra. All right, so what are we up to? So we talked about the dragon seeds getting recruited from King's Landing. We talked about Jace and Rhaenyra's argument, and we talked about Ulf being peer pressured into claiming a dragon. And apparently he's been using this to get free drinks for years, claiming that he's a bastard. Which, again, how has Larys not picked up on this? Like, it seems like there's a bunch of people who are, like, openly acknowledging that they like Rhaenyra and they are Targaryen bastards. That seems like something that the Master of Whisperers, Larys Strong, should probably be aware of. So we talked about how Kat and Hugh's daughter have died, and now Hugh has decided that he wants to claim a dragon because he says that he's the bastard son of Sarah Targaryen, who ran off and worked in a brothel. And yeah, I wonder if this will threaten Hugh and Kat's relationship. I mean, their child just died, and Hugh is now going against Kat's wishes. I wonder what their relationship, how that's going to be changed by Hugh becoming a dragon rider. And I do think it's fairly ridiculous that the Greens don't notice or don't stop all these dragon seeds leaving. So, the dragon seeds arrive at Dragonstone. I was surprised how many dragon seeds there are. In the books, they talk more about some highborn people as well as the bastards try to claim dragons. Like, it's not just random bastards from King's Landing. It's like various... I mean, as well as Stefan Darkland, there's some highborn people who are tempted, and, you know, there's all sorts from all sorts of places. But I guess in the show, they're trying to emphasize, you know, Rhaenyra is choosing bastards despite Jace's wishes. So, yeah, a lot of blonde people have turned up. We talked about the Dragon Keepers objecting to it. And now Rhaenyra gives this speech to her potential dragon riders, and she shows a lot of vulnerability, I think. Like, she says that, well, you know, I don't fully understand who can claim a dragon, and I guess we're just following destiny, and we're going to figure it out together, and we're going to make peace together, and we'll do it, and it'll be fun. It's interesting that, you know, Rhaenyra could have done a very different speech. Like, Rhaenyra could have said, I'm in charge, I know how this works, you owe duty to me, you swore me fealty, but she's pretty, like, hippy-dippy kumbaya in this speech, I feel. Which is an interesting choice, because, like, if she's raising up these bastards to be powerful dragon riders, she needs them to be loyal to her, you know? She needs to assert her authority. Well, so she's got to be careful about, like, what her authority over these people are, I feel, you know? But yeah, we see that all sorts of people have answered the call. And yeah, there are lots of random Targaryen bastards around because the Targaryens have been on Dragonstone for some 230 years and they have been having sex with commoners. I mean, some of these people might not really be dragon seeds. Like, there might be blonde people who think that they're Targaryen. Maybe their parents told them that their parents are Targaryen. Maybe they don't know for sure. But yeah, there's lots of them around, and so the sowing of the seeds begins, or the red sowing, as it's called. Because Targaryen bastards are called dragon seeds, so now they are planting those seeds and seeing what grows. And so we get this wonderful sort of slow horror scene where Vermithor emerges from the darkness. I think it sounds great. I think it looks great. I mean, Vermithor is like Godzilla. Like, this is a big, monstrous creature with like a roar that shakes in your chest. I think it's all really wonderfully done. And I think just how intense this is and how scary this is to face this beast is captured really nicely. So, this fella comes up and tries to claim Vermithor, and Vermithor ultimately just burns him instead. And a whole bunch of people get burned, and it just immediately descends into chaos. In the books, it sounds a little bit more like everyone just sort of forms an orderly queue and either gets, those like YouTube, Tinder, IRL videos. It's like that, where people either get, burned or accepted one by one. But no, in the show, it just immediately descends into absolute bedlam, and I think that they made a fun, dramatic scene out of what could have been a lot more straightforward, So yeah, we talked about how it's cool how Hugh claims Vermithor by being brave and by facing death and by being a little bit unhinged and roaring at Vermithor like a dragon, and that makes Vermithor respect Hugh. And it's also cool that Hugh like saves this woman who was about to be burned by Vermithor, but Hugh ran out and said, burn me, burn me. So it seems like Hugh has a sort of a heroic streak. Hugh is channeling a lot of Jon Snow here, isn't he? Being brave, shouting at dragons, trying to save innocent people. So that's how Hugh claims Vermithor, while Ulf just, stumbles into Silverwing, and Silverwing chooses him. And meanwhile, like, dozens of innocent people got burned along the way, so... very cool to have new dragon riders, but I wonder how many people will be burned by these new dragons. So then we get a council scene. It is mentioned that Lord Ormond Hightower is set upon by House Beesbury, who are angry at the death of Lyman Beesbury, so they're fighting Lord Ormond Hightower and his army, along with some other Reach houses, so that's a big problem. But Tessarion, the dragon of Alicent's son Daeron, is now flying and now seems to be ready for combat, so maybe they'll be able to mop up the Reach. We are also told that... then Aemond notices that Silverwing is flying over King's Landing. I think it's really fun how most of the characters this season have been very serious, very dour, very stressed. They've been very restrained in their use of the dragons. But now Ulf just goes on a crazy joyride over King's Landing. Ulf is not burdened by the stress of politics and war so much as the other characters. So he just does this sort of selfish, fun, yeehaw, this is pod racing type moment. Just showing off his dragon. I guess similar to how Adam reportedly flew over Driftmark on his dragon. And it's similar to when Aemond flew on his dragon Vhagar on Driftmark. So everyone wants to take their new dragon for a spin once they claim a dragon. And yeah, it's nice to see some like fun and just some joyous, carefree dragon riding. And it's very funny that he comes all the way here to King's Landing from Dragonstone. Like, did Ulf want to do that to show off to his friends? Or did Silverwing decide to come to King's Landing? Like, who's in control here? It doesn't really look like Ulf is super in control of the situation. I also wonder where he got the dragon saddle. Like, I don't think Silverwing was wearing the saddle. Where did Ulf know to get a dragon saddle from? I don't know. But Aemond sees, uh-oh, there's a dragon flying over my city. I better deal with that. I like how his dragon Vhagar is parked outside the city, apparently. Maybe Vhagar is too big to even fit inside the dragon pit. So Aemond chases Ulf and Silverwing all the way to Dragonstone. But then Aemond sees that Rhaenyra has 3 new dragons. She has Vermithor with Ulf and Silverwing with Vermithor with Hugh, Silverwing with Ulf, Adam with Sea Smoke, as well as her dragon Cyrax, as well as Jace's dragon Vermax, as well as Baela's dragon Moondancer. So Aemond decides to run away. And Vhagar resists Aemond's command a couple of times. Aemond says, like, turn around, Vhagar, no Vhagar, and Vhagar roars in defiance a few times. So it's really scary that Vhagar, the biggest weapon in this world, continues to defy Aemond. And it makes you wonder, how much control is Ulf going to have of Silverwing? How much control will Hugh have of Vermithor? How much control will Adam have of Silverwing? This is a huge triumph for Rhaenyra. And she looks very pleased with herself, because Rhaenyra now appears to have the power to win this war. She has so many more dragons than the Greens do. But this is dangerous power, and Viserys said that the idea that we control them is an illusion. So... exciting stuff. Who knows what is going to happen next? Okay, what else did I want to say? We talked. Oh, I really liked Rhaenyra's dress when she was talking to the dragon seeds. Rhaenyra had a great, like, red dragony dress with some big shoulders, and it was very red. And yeah, this dress I think is really cool, and like the jewelry with the red stone. Like, one of the disappointments of the later seasons of Game of Thrones is that Daenerys very rarely wore red Targaryen clothes. Jon Snow never wore red Targaryen clothes, despite supposedly being Aegon Targaryen. Seeing Rhaenyra actually embody her Targaryen identity is really important, because that's part of her political legitimacy. Thanks for the donation from Jess, who says that Rhaenyra seems satisfied to scare the man who killed her son. Yeah, it's true. I mean, Rhaenyra is facing down the most powerful weapon in this world, Vhagar, and she's facing the man, Aemond, who killed her son Luke, and who killed her friend and advisor, Rhaenys. So yeah, hugely satisfying for Rhaenyra, and I wonder how Rhaenyra is going to use this enormous power that she now has. So we talked about how, Vermithor... I mean, Vermithor had a really fun time stomping around eating people. Like, Vermithor is an old man, but I think Vermithor is just having an absolute blast, just chasing humans and eating them. Like, this is just snack time for Vermithor, which is not at all what Rhaenyra had in mind, but that's what happens. And, I think it's cool how the one little human who actually stands and roars back is who Vermithor accepts. I also enjoyed Rhaenyra's interaction with Vermithor when she sort of roared at Vermithor. She says, like, "Dohai Ras," and she sort of goes, "Rah," at Vermithor, and that's sort of part of how Vermithor gets convinced to respect Rhaenyra. So, yeah, all of that was fun. In the books, they said that 16 men died in the sowing of the seeds, and many more were injured and burned. There was a fella called Silver Dennis who was eaten. We might see that happen later on. So for a moment, Rhaenyra seems to think that she's made a mistake. Like, when Viserys starts burning people, Rhaenyra sort of has a moment where it's like, oh, maybe I shouldn't have done this. But she seems validated when Hugh claims Vermithor. So was it worth the sacrifice of all these dead people? Was it worth pissing off her son Jace? We shall find out. So, we talked about Ulf's joyride. We talked about Vhagar disobeying Aemond. I think this is most of what I wanted to say. So now I'm going to read as many of your donations and super chats as I can. I might not have time to read every single one, but I will do my best to respond to as many of your thoughts and questions as I can. So thanks so much for listening. Please like and subscribe. This is the second last episode of House of the Dragon Season 2. Next week is the finale. And so we will, as usual, do our weekly live stream. We will, as usual, do our edited, explained video. And of course, if you are hankering for more dragon talk, you might like to go and check out Nebula, because on the video streaming site Nebula, there is, I believe it's 64 hours of exclusive dragon talk between Glidus and my notorious evil grunkle Alt Swift X. It's a bit more of a loose conversational tone over on Dragon Time with Swift and Glidus, but you might enjoy it. So if you'd like to sign up, you can check it out at nebula.tv/AltSwiftX. It's a paid subscription. There's a 40% discount if you use the link in the description, and it's a good way to support Alt-Shift-X and Alt-Shift-X and Glidus and Triarchy Admiral Shirako Loha. All right, so thank you, Achera, who says, not just Team Black anymore, just Team Jace. Yeah, maybe Jace is going to be his own side. Maybe Jace is going to fly off on Vermax and do his own thing. Panel says, will you do a top fighters of House of the Dragon, like you did with the other video? Yeah, so we did make an Alt-Shift-X video about the best fighters in Game of Thrones, and that was focused on the timeline of the main Game of Thrones books and Robert's Rebellion. There isn't really enough information in the books to rank the fighters in other time periods. Like, we couldn't, because the point of that Alt-Shift-X video is that it was based on, like, textual evidence. It was trying to make, like, a really informed judgment of who the best fighter is based on, like, what feats and what accomplishments are in the books. There really isn't enough information to make any kind of, like, objective ranking about the House of the Dragon era or any other era. So, yeah, I don't know. Maybe you'd have to ask my Scurrilous Demi colleague Alt-Shift-X to do that, because it really would be a more opinion-based type of a ranking, I think. Perplexed Pegasus says, what's your favorite dragon so far? I think Tessarion is going to look amazing. Yeah, Tessarion is called the Blue Queen. In the books, the dragon's fire has different colors. The color of the fire that they breathe is often reflects the color of the dragon itself. So yeah, I hope that Tessarion is blue and beautiful. I was a little bit disappointed with the color of Silverwing. Like, Silverwing is meant to be silver, whereas it's more of a gray in Hot D. I would have liked Silverwing to be a bit more shiny and silver. I also thought that Vermithor is, like, looking quite red. I'm pretty sure that's Vermithor. But Vermithor doesn't look quite so much bronze as red to me. It almost looks too much like Melee's. But, you know, whatever. I think it still looks pretty good. Thank you, Berkeley, who says, hey, Shift, I've asked before, but who do you watch House of the Dragon with? I watched it with my dad. Well, I have a full panel of dragon experts silently fact-checking me as I stream live, and that's why I never make a mistake, even though I'm talking off the top of my head. Yeah, no, Alt-Shift-X does make mistakes sometimes. There was a mistake in the explained video about last episode when we said that the dog that Hugh pats is the same dog that Cheese had earlier in the season. But on further inspection, no, they appear to be different dogs. I'm not sure why they've introduced a second dog into the story, but it does appear that the dog that Hugh pats last episode was a different dog, not the same dog as Cheese's dog, so I made a mistake there. Sutty Butty says, Laris's hesitancy to tell Aemond what he was told about a commoner taking sea smoke might reflect Aemond's reactions to this info, not just a bad source. So Laris might hear about Dragonseeds leaving, but doesn't want to pass this on to Aemond. Like, yeah, maybe Aemond will be angry at Laris and Jasper for bringing this information. I don't know. It feels to me like Laris is manipulating Jasper and manipulating Aemond is what's going on here. But yeah, I think it's ambiguous why Laris doesn't tell Aemond. But I mean, what is the point of Laris being a Master of Whisperers if he's not going to bring Aemond Whisperers, you know? It may be that Laris is aligning more with King Aegon than with Regent Aemond. Thank you, Helena's Bug Collection, who says, silly thing, but it makes me laugh how hard Aemond always seems to steer Vhagar. Like, dude, your little tug of the handles isn't going to do anything. I agree. It was very funny seeing Aemond on Vhagar, trying to, like, pull Vhagar to point in a different direction. Like, look at him go. He's going, turn. He's like a motorcycle racer who's, like, trying to, like, lean into the turn. But I agree, like, there's no way Vhagar can even feel what Aemond is doing when he's leaning like that, right? And I think it shows that Aemond is struggling to control Vhagar. I think that's the point of that. Aemond should be able to control Vhagar with just a word, but Vhagar does not entirely accept or respect Aemond's words. So that's a problem. Thank you, Dish Murphy, who says, how do you recall atomic details to random questions and concepts while having every reference ready to support your responses? Yeah, well, it's judicious use of Control F, and also having done it for 10 years helps. But yeah, thanks. We try. We do try here at Alt Shift X. Thank you, Gunnar Gundarson, who says, Silverwing is wearing a saddle in her nest. You Ulf. Is Silverwing wearing the saddle already? Well, I mean, why was Silverwing wearing a saddle in Dragonstone? Here's Silverwing in... I don't see a saddle on Silverwing here. It is like, is Silverwing cross that Ulf stomped on eggs? Like, that might have been Silverwing's eggs. Is that a saddle on? I'm not quite sure if there's a saddle on Silverwing there. I don't really see a saddle there clearly. But in any case, Ulf does appear to have figured it out. I do feel like Silverwing should be bigger. Like, Silverwing should be the third oldest and third biggest dragon. Like, she's only a few years younger than Vermithor, at least in the books. I feel like Silverwing should be bigger. But apparently not. Thank you for the super chat from Wowee, who says they planned for Ulf to go to King's Landing in order to bait Aemond to show off their dragons and hopefully avoid war. Yeah, that's a good theory. Maybe Rhaenyra actually told Ulf, hey, go to King's Landing, bait Aemond, so that we can trap Aemond. Yeah, maybe that's what they were going for. But, like, based on Ulf's behavior here, like, he doesn't appear to be following commands and doing a mission. He appears to be going on a joyride, is what it looks like to me. He looks like he's barely in control, so I don't think that's what's going on, but it would be a smart plan if they were trying to lure Aemond. Thank you, Dylan, who says, dragons who don't live in the pits grow a lot faster, so that partly explains Dany's dragon's size. Also, the magic resurgence helped them grow faster. Yeah, those are some good thoughts, Dylan, because, yeah, in Game of Thrones, especially in the books, there is this idea that because Daenerys' dragons are born and because the White Walkers are coming back, there's this resurgence of magic happening. It might be connected to the Red Comet. So yeah, maybe that helps the dragons grow faster. And yeah, there is also this idea in the books that when dragons are kept in caves and kept in dragon pits, it stunts their growth and they don't grow quite as large. And yeah, I suppose that Vermithor and Silverwing and Cyrax, I guess all of these dragons in Hot D have spent most of their lives inside the dragon pit or inside the caves at Dragonstone. So yeah, I agree. That is a possible explanation for why Daenerys' dragons are bigger. I mean, Daenerys' dragons were kept indoors in Meereen for a while in, like, Season 5. So that should have stunted them a little bit, but, you know, I suspect that the answer is don't think about it. Like, I suspect that the timeline and the dragon growth rates is not something that makes a whole lot of sense. It's not something that's totally consistent, but, yeah, I agree. Those are pretty good possible explanations. Yeah, more people are saying that this was a trap to try and lure Aemond back to the other dragons. I think it's an interesting idea, but if Rhaenyra and the Blacks were trying to trap Aemond, don't you think that Rhaenyra would be on her dragon right now? And don't you think these dragons would be, like, hiding behind Dragonstone to sneak attack Aemond instead of standing in front of Dragonstone? Like Rhaenyra does not seem to be trying to, like, pursue Vhagar or anything. So I agree that it's a cool idea that Rhaenyra and Ulf might be trying to lure and trap Aemond, but I don't think that's what's happening, because they don't appear to be chasing or expecting Aemond necessarily. Thank you, Jolga Cards, who says, the reason Jace went to the Twins was to get the Northern Army direct access to the Riverlands, but now that situation has been sorted out. It would have been cool to see Bolton team up with Willem Blackwood. So, yeah, the geography corner. So, the Northmen are coming south because Lord Cregan Stark has agreed to support Rhaenyra. And the quickest way to get from the north to the south involves crossing this bridge at the Twins. And I think that the Twins are still useful for Cregan to get south, regardless of whether the Riverlands are fully controlled by the Blacks or not. I mean, there is this road to the east of the... I mean, that's the King's Road, isn't it? Yeah, so I guess the King's Road goes past the Twins. So I guess you probably don't need the Twins Bridge to get south necessarily, but you do have to cross somewhere else, which is closer to King's Landing, which might be more dangerous, perhaps. So yeah, it's not entirely clear to me if Rhaenyra and the Northmen really need the crossing at the Twins, but I'm sure it helps. I mean that whole interaction between Jace and the Freys isn't in the books, so it's hard to speculate. Thank you, Maggie, who says that Hugh and Ulf both fell into water/dragon piss before being accepted by the dragons. Yeah, it's almost a baptism or something, isn't it? Because, yeah, Hugh did fall into a sort of a puddle of what was hopefully water before he got accepted, and Ulf also fell in a puddle. So, yeah, I don't know. That is a funny little connection. I mean, if you want to get all symbolic about it, it almost connects to Alicent going into that lake, the idea of cleansing or absolution or, touched by some kind of holy water before you accept the holy fire. I don't know. Could be something like that. Thank you, Where My Dragons, who says, what does Westerosi lore have to say about DRUI, dragon riding while under the influence? Yeah, Ulf is a fan of alcohol. In the books, especially, he's called Ulf the Sot, because he's an alcoholic. And so I do hope that Ulf practices responsible driving and does not drive while under the influence. I wonder if Silverwing can get drunk. Do you think dragons can get drunk? Thank you, Sekiro, who says that the dragon chooses the rider, just like the wand chooses the wizard, according to Ollivander in Harry Potter. Yeah, it does seem as though the dragon chooses the rider. Expecto dragon. Spectrum says, King Viserys at one point gave Rhaenyra permission to choose a husband, right? Imagine if she had just married Harwin Strong legitimately back then. Yeah, Viserys did give Rhaenyra permission to marry who she wanted, but then she didn't marry anyone, and she had that kerfuffle at Storm's End, and ultimately Viserys said, okay, you've just got to marry Laenor, and in return I will fire Otto. So like Rhaenyra made this sort of deal with Viserys and agreed to marry Laenor. Imagine the world in which Rhaenyra just married Harwin Strong. That might be a better world. Another thing that she could have done was just, like, get Viserys to legitimize Jace, because bastards can be legitimized by a king, made officially legitimate, and if Rhaenyra had Jace, Luke, and Joff legitimized, that would have potentially simplified things and made Jace more legit. I mean, Rhaenyra as queen now could legitimize Jace, Luke, and Joff, arguably. But maybe that would only make things worse if she's admitting that Jace, Luke, and Joff are indeed bastards when she was denying that for all those years. It is a messy situation that Rhaenyra and Viserys and the rest have created. Thank you, Binksy the Dragon Rider, who says, the girl about to be roasted by Vermithor probably reminded Hugh of his daughter who he couldn't save, which motivated him to stand up to Vermithor. Maybe she'll be adopted by Hugh and Cat. I think that's very smart, Binksy. Because, yeah, Hugh is a father who just lost his daughter, and he said to Cat that, I couldn't save my daughter. I feel so bad that I couldn't save my daughter. And now here Hugh is saving a different girl. That's beautiful. He in some way, he is making up for the death of his daughter. So, yeah, I agree. I think that's beautiful. Mr. Pooper says, if magic grows dragons, what kind of magic would work? So, the books don't say that magic grows dragons faster, but the books do say that now that Daenerys' dragons have hatched in the Game of Thrones books, that means that other forms of magic, like fire magic, are stronger. But it's this very blurry thing where it's like, well, okay, is the magic coming back because dragons are born, or are dragons hatching because magic is coming back? Are the White Walkers returning because the dragons are returning? Or are the dragons returning because the White Walkers are returning? Is the red comet, the meteor above Westeros, is that causing the magic and causing the dragons and causing the White Walkers? Is it like the Plague Star in Tough Voyaging? There's it's very vague, and I expect that we will learn more about the mechanics of that magic stuff if and when George finishes The Winds of Winter and The Dream of Spring. Kevin Khalil says that Mazaria feels more like the hand of the king or the hand of the queen for Rhaenyra than Corlys does. Yeah, I think it's kind of lame how Rhaenyra has made Corlys hand of the king, and Corlys has proceeded to not do anything. Like, it should be a big deal that Lord Corlys now has the right to govern and the right to, like, support Rhaenyra. But all Corlys has done since he's become hand is, like, make Alan his first mate. They're gonna pick up Bar Emmon's son on their boat, or they have already. Corlys told Alan to get the messages to Wallinda. But, is Corlys gonna do anything more than that? I hope that Corlys does something in the next episode. Thank you, Doc Nick, who says that it feels like one at a time might be a better method of dragon claiming. Yeah, it feels like far fewer people would have died at the sowing of the seeds if they just, sent one person in at a time instead of putting dozens of people standing right in front of Vermithor where they all get roasted at once. Maybe they could have been smarter about that. Thank you, Enzonia, who says, Larys is quiet quitting. Protest for last week's workplace harassment. Yeah, Larys is just no longer doing his job. He'll turn up, but he won't do any work. Maybe that's what he's doing. Thank you, Slevin Kelevra, who says, the way that Silverwing pushed Ulf seemed very playful, similar to Ulf's personality. Maybe that's a correlation between their personalities. Yeah. Maybe Silverwing is just a goofy goober, and Silverwing just likes joshing around and being silly. And Ulf is similar, so maybe that's why they chose each other. Like, yeah, maybe Silverwing was like, this guy seems fun. It's funny when human man falls down. I can get along with this guy. Let's go on a joyride over King's Landing together. I think that would be fun. There is no real characterization like that of Silverwing in the books, but, like, it would be funny if Silverwing was, like, the fun dragon. Silverwing was previously written by Queen Alysanne, and Queen Alysanne was not necessarily a fun-loving individual. She was, like, a smart and compassionate individual. She was politically minded. She was a caring mother. We never get the impression that she has a personality like Ulf, but hey, maybe that's just what Silverwing's looking for these days. Rolf says, does Rhaenyra know that Laenor is dead? And is that why he lets Stefan try to claim Seasmoke? Yeah, I think that they should address Laenor. Because as far as we know, Laenor, Velaryon, the ex-husband of Rhaenyra, is still alive. She faked his death and helped him escape Westeros. But the fact that Adam has now claimed Seasmoke might mean that Laenor has died, because there's a magic bond, and dragons usually don't accept a new rider while their old rider is still alive. So I feel like Rhaenyra must be thinking that in this scene with Adam, and I really hope that they acknowledge it, and I really hope that Rhaenyra talks about this with Corlys, because last time we heard, Corlys thinks that Rhaenyra had Laenor killed. I think that Corlys should care about the death of his son. I think that Corlys should have feelings about working for the person who apparently murdered his son, so I really hope they address that. Thank you, Kale. Thank you, Jane, who says that if Corlys had been cast as biracial rather than black, it would make sense. Yeah, so, like, there is in the books this idea that the Velaryons and the Targaryens have intermarried a bunch over the years. And so you would expect that the Velaryons and the Targaryens would look more similar, whereas in House of the Dragon, most or all of the Velaryons are black, whereas most or all of the Targaryens are white. So I guess in Hot D, maybe they haven't intermarried as much in the past. So, like, I mean, that is a possibility. Like, maybe the Targaryens and the Velaryons simply haven't intermarried. Maybe the Velaryons are doing their own separate incestuous intermarriage thing parallel to the Targaryens. I think that is a plausible possibility. Some people have also speculated that, like, maybe the Velaryons intermarried with people from the Summer Islands. There's a lot of ways that it could work, because, like, the full family tree of the Velaryons is never explained in the books. So, yeah, it's basically not explained how exactly all of that works. Yeah, but there's a few different interpretations. Nelly says that bonding with Vermithor was easy, barely an inconvenience, while Silverwing was very laid back. Yeah, it is fun, the contrast between Vermithor making an absolute ruckus and Silverwing just being very chill. Paulo says, which red dragon is that appeared next to Rhaenyra? Yeah, I had the same thought, Paulo. Like, I saw this big red dragon over here to the left of Rhaenyra, and I was like, which dragon is that? Because I think it's meant to be Vermithor, the Bronze Fury, but that doesn't look very bronze to me. That looks more red. And we've already seen, red Meleys and red Caraxes, so I found it a little bit confusing that Vermithor looks so red. I wish Vermithor was a bit more bronze, but I guess they don't want it to look too similar to to yellow Cyrax. It's tricky. I mean, they're trying to make the dragons look distinct, but they're also trying to make the dragons look consistent with how they looked in Game of Thrones, which was mostly very sort of like muted, muddy colors. So it's tricky aesthetically. We're not going to spoil or talk about anything. We're not going to spoil future episodes in this stream. Acedia says, maybe Laenor is dead to Seasmoke, and that's all that matters. Yeah, maybe, like, Seasmoke knows that Laenor is still alive, or doesn't care whether Laenor is still alive. Like, maybe Seasmoke is like, well, Laenor has left me, so I'm going to choose Adam, Laenor's half-brother, and that's almost as good. Maybe the Dragon Rider doesn't have to die. Maybe the bond between Laenor and Seasmoke has been severed. I guess that is something they could say next episode. Thanks for the donation from Rolf, who says, also talking about the idea that a dragon will only accept a new rider once their former rider has died. And yeah, Rhaenyra should know that, I agree. Alistair says, off topic, but how far down the line is the Mad King? Well, I can't show you the full family tree because that would kind of spoil the ending of the Dance of the Dragons. But there are many more generations of Targaryen kings before we get to the Mad King. There are like 170 years between now and Jon Snow and Daenerys. So, yeah, there are like a good dozen or so more Targaryen kings after House of the Dragon. And they could make, 20 more seasons of House of the Dragon exploring those kings further down the line if they wanted to. There aren't detailed books explaining those reigns further down the line, but there is some information in the books. Jonathan says, Vhagar is trying to figure out why Visenya has a neat anime eye patch. Yeah, there is like this fun idea that Vhagar is so old and doddery that she thinks that Aemond just is Visenya, and Vhagar thinks that she's, burning the Dornish when she's, burning people. So, Vhagar has some history. What is the mental state of Vhagar at this point? Like, older dragons tend to get kind of sleepy and lazy, apparently. Balerion died of old age. And, I mean, Vhagar seems to be not much younger than Balerion. I wonder if Vhagar will die of old age. I wonder how far away that is. Or maybe Balerion was poisoned by the Maesters. G. Powell says, keep waiting for a Jurassic Park theme when the bastards were being torn apart. Yeah, it was very like rampaging T-Rex when Vermithor was wreaking havoc. Lowell says, Rhaenyra's one-on-one interaction with Vermithor is the highlight of the episode. They did a great job showing how they are mentally connecting with just expressions. Yeah, there was a whole sort of conversation between Rhaenyra and Vermithor, wasn't there? Like, Vermithor was pretty... Vermithor seemed to be just pissed off that he was woken up from his nap. Vermithor is an old man who wants to just sit in his lazy boy and listen to the radio. But Rhaenyra woke him up, and he's a bit grumpy about that. But then Rhaenyra came and said, hey, I am a Targaryen. I'm a dragon lord. You should respect me. I have the blood. Vermithor sniffed and smelled the dragon blood. So, that whole connection happened, which I thought was done nicely. Thank you, Guest, who says that everyone is telling Rhaenyra that she's wrong for using the dragon seeds to claim the dragons, but what other recourse does she have against Vhagar? She asks them, what would you have me do, when they have no answer? Yeah, I agree. Rhaenyra does not have a lot of choice, because she has no other way of fighting Vhagar. And the Greens probably will kill her if she doesn't defeat them. So, I mean, I would say that one of Rhaenyra's other choices is, instead of recruiting bastards who might undermine Jace's legitimacy, she maybe should look for more noble-born people with Targaryen blood, like Steffon Darklyn. Because there probably are still some of them around somewhere. So that would have been another option. I mean, maybe she should legitimize all of these bastards. I agree that, like, she needs to sort out what is the political status of Adam, of Hugh, of Ulf. Like, where do they fit in the feudal order? What is this new order that she's creating? Because if she leaves everything loosey-goosey, then there's a potential for rebellion. I mean, that's kind of what this whole series is about, is that this rigid social class structure, it gets really dangerous when there's any uncertainty about succession and about rank and about who inherits what. It's really dangerous and unstable. So she's got to clarify, like, who's who, what are the rules, who's inheriting what. And as soon as you get someone a dragon, they might get big ideas about what they deserve to have and what they deserve to rule. Jaehaerys says that Jaehaerys' older sister, Rhaena, rode Dreamfire before Helena. Oh, yeah, you are right. You are correct. Yeah, thanks for the correction, Jaehaerys the Goat. Yeah, I was wrong before when I said that Helena is the first rider of Dreamfire. It is, yeah, Dreamfire was in fact ridden by Rhaena Targaryen, a different Rhaena Targaryen, before Helena. So yeah, Dreamfire is one of the older dragons, one of the bigger dragons. It's crazy that we haven't seen more of Dreamfire. On the official HBO website, it said that Helena doesn't ride Dreamfire very often, which is a damn shame, because it would be cool to see Dreamfire, and Dreamfire could be really important in the war. I feel like they should be talking about Dreamfire at the Green Council. They should be saying, like, hey, we need to get Dreamfire into the war so that we can win. But yeah, thank you for the correction, Jaehaerys. Dreamfire was indeed ridden by Rhaena before Helena. Thank you, Blackthorn, who says, off topic, but I like to hear you speaking because English isn't my mother tongue and still can understand all you say. Cheers from Brazil. Thanks, Blackthorn. I do try to speak clearly, even though I pronounce names wrong sometimes. I shouldn't say Daemon, I should say Daemon. I shouldn't say Aemond, I should say Aemond. I shouldn't say Dune, I should say Dune. Or at least so they tell me. Thank you, Mr. Tucker, who says that Ulf and Hugh are descendants of Silverwing and Vermithor's riders. Adam and Laenor share a father. Maybe it isn't Targ blood, but blood of the relatives. Yeah, I agree with that, Tucker. Thank you, Least, who says, hoping for a red herring with regards to Rhaena. And thank you, Luke, who says, been a fan since the R+L=J video. My goodness, it's been almost 10 years since we made that video, the first Alt-Shift-X Game of Thrones video. Question, have you picked a side in the conflict, black or green? I think Risa Fans said something funny on a red carpet about how the blacks and the greens are both genocidal maniacs and should not be in charge. Some people like to say they're on team small folk, they're on team common people, they're on team Mazaria. I think that makes sense. I think definitely part of the point of the story is that the greens and the blacks are both destructive forces and unjust forces, and you know, Rhaenyra and Alicent both have some good intentions at this point, but the whole monarchic order is dangerous. I mean, I do think that in general Rhaenyra and the blacks seem more in the right than the greens do. I mean, Aemond is a murderous, kin-slaying, brutal man. Aegon is a bad person. I don't think either of them seem like they would be good rulers. Rhaenyra, at least, is trying to rule well, and at least is trying to make peace. And also, Rhaenyra was King Viserys' chosen heir. So I feel like Rhaenyra and the Blacks are pretty clearly in the right more than the Greens are, or at least would be better rulers than the Greens are. Although, of course, Rhaenyra has also made terrible mistakes, like having bastards with Harwin, and you know, the whole Laenor situation was a bit of a questionable decision, and marrying Daemon was a pretty questionable decision. But Team Black seems better than Team Green, I think, and I hope that they do continue to like complicate that and question that, because in the books at least, Rhaenyra and Alicent are both a lot more bloodthirsty, and so I wonder if we will see a sort of a arc in that direction. Thank you, Bryce. Yeah, it is true that both of Ulf and Hugh, they both fell in puddles of water before they got accepted by dragons. Maybe dragons just enjoy damp humans. Maybe you've got to be baptized in a little bit of dragon piddle before you will be accepted by a dragon. Maybe that's how it works. Who knows? Thank you, Sully, who says, wouldn't it be cool? Oh, yeah, we did talk about that. Okay. Thank you for the donation from Dish, who says that Hugh knew his family was starving, so he considered eating that dog. I wonder, Hugh says that he wants to provide for his wife, Kat. Now that Hugh gets a dragon, is he going to join Rhaenyra's war, or is he going to be like, okay, I'm going to, go and make some money for my wife, Kat. I'm going to go and steal some food on my dragon. I'm going to get Kat on my dragon and fly off with my wife and become a dragon lord in Norvos. I don't know. There's a lot of freedom. There's a lot of options you have when you have a dragon. So it'll be interesting to see how Hugh, Ulf, and Adam behave. Thank you, Varsoon, who says that the big sniff is shot for shot Jon petting Drogon. Yeah, I mean, all of this dragon sowing business is, it's a striking contrast to when Jon Snow claims a dragon in Game of Thrones. This is the one time in Game of Thrones when we saw someone claim a dragon, aside from, Daenerys, who hatched her dragons. And it was a lot more straightforward when Jon claimed a dragon, wasn't it? Daenerys did not approach this with the gravitas that Rhaenyra approaches dragon claiming in this episode. I mean, Daenerys doesn't know dragon lore. I mean, Daenerys doesn't have dragon keepers to inform her about how dragon keeping normally goes. So Daenerys doesn't seem to realize that you need to have Targaryen blood to ride a dragon. But yeah, there is a lot more of a sense of ritual and danger and sacrifice in the red sowing in this episode, which I think is very appropriate. Thank you, Jess K, who says, Jaehaerys did genuinely regret his treatment of Sarah later in life, and maybe he sensed that Hugh was her son and decided to accept him to make up for it. Ooh. Yeah, well, there is a lot of mystery about what the relationship is, I suppose, between Sarah Targaryen and her bastard son Hugh, and what Jaehaerys might have thought about that. I mean, one of the interesting wrinkles in the books is that at the Harrenhal Council, which we saw at the start of Season 1, Episode 1, a bunch of random Targaryen bastards turned up and said, hey, we should be king. And some of them were Sarah's children. 3 of Sarah Targaryen's bastard children came to the Harrenhal Council. So they would have been siblings of Hugh. Maybe even Hugh himself, for all we know, might have turned up here and said, I would like to be king, please. And obviously they rejected the bastards and chose Viserys as the heir to the throne instead. But yeah, we can only speculate. And yeah, as you say, Jaehaerys regretted what happened with Sarah. He regretted that his daughter ran off to the east and after this sex scandal, and that's one of the themes throughout Jaehaerys' reign, is that he was widely regarded as a great king. Jaehaerys was considered one of the best kings ever, but he had some really complicated, fraught relationships with his daughters, who really strained against the restrictions of being a woman in this royal family. So, yeah, interesting stuff. Thank you, Squiggle, who says love your work, and thank you, Anthony, who says big fan. Does Hugh Hammer claim Vermithor in the books? Yes, he does. Do you believe the dragons recognize the personality of their rider, or is it more based on blood? I think that it's both personality and Targaryen blood. I think the Targaryen blood is a factor. I think that just quietly, you probably don't necessarily need Targaryen blood to ride a dragon. I'm certain that it helps, but I don't think it's necessarily a requirement, and there are some hints of that in the books, I think. But I think part of it is vibes. I mean, it's more fun if it's vibes. It's more fun if the dragons have personalities, so I think that's part of what's going on. Thank you, Tony, who says, would love your take on the new Lord Tully kid. Yeah, so I agree that Lord Oscar Tully does a pretty good job of he has now ascended to rule the Riverlands. He is now a great lord. He's now one of the most powerful people in Westeros. And it's a tough gig because he's a really young kid. And this realm, this region, the Riverlands that he now rules, is in a sorry state because bloody Daemon has turned up and told Willem Blackwood to commit war crimes against the Brackens, and everyone is pissed off about that. So it's really delicate and difficult for Oscar to convince the River Lords to follow him. And so the way for a lord to convince people that they are in charge is to dispense justice and to show strength and to show protection for the people. And so Oscar does that. by telling Daemon to kill Willem. He brings justice to the person who committed the atrocities. And at the same time, he uses Willem as a scapegoat so that Oscar can convince the Riverlords to support Daemon and Rhaenyra and the Blacks. So, yeah, I think this was, like, pretty masterfully done by Oscar, honestly. I think he did a good job. So, go Oscar. Team Muppet. Thank you, Jess, who says maybe the spirit of the previous writers are in the bodies of their dragons, which explains why Silverwing was so welcoming, while Vermithor wasn't. Yeah, that's a good point, Jess, that Alysanne did respect common people more than most people did. Like, Alysanne had all these women's councils where she talked to common-born women, and she made all these, like, legal reforms to protect common people and to protect women better. And so, yeah, maybe the fact that Silverwing's previous writer, Alysanne, cared about the commons helped Silverwing to want to accept Ulf as a common-born person. And there is this idea that maybe the magic connection between dragon and rider is similar to the magic connection between skin changers and their animals. And there is this idea that when a warg, when a skin changer dies, they live on in their animal. We saw that in Game of Thrones when Orell lived on inside his eagle. This guy Orell died, his soul went into his eagle, and then the eagle attacked Jon Snow's face because the previous... the skin changer lives on in the animal. And so if it is that the dragon bond is similar to skin changing, maybe the dragon rider's soul lives on inside the dragon. So, you know, maybe within Vhagar is the spirit of Queen bloody Visenya Targaryen and Prince Balon Targaryen and Laena Velaryon are all living inside Vhagar, influencing Vhagar and influencing Aemond. I think that's a cool and legit idea. So, yeah, maybe the spirit of Alysanne is in Silverwing. The spirit of King Jaehaerys is in Vermithor. I think that would be cool. Thank you for the donation from Olive the Dog, who says, is the girl that was hiding behind the rock with Hugh the same girl that was dancing at the brothel when Aemond was with Sylvie? Yeah, there was a blonde girl at the brothel, and she has a name, at least on the wiki. I don't know if she has an official name necessarily, but yeah, maybe it's the same woman. That would make sense. That would make sense. Thank you, Curmudgeon Muffin, who says, would someone need to have Valyrian blood to warg a dragon? That's a fantastic question. There are some interesting... So one of the things about, like, the later Targaryens is that it was Aegon the Fifth Targaryen who marries a Blackwood, and also Bloodraven's mother was a Blackwood. So the Targaryen family, after a certain point, has Blackwood First Men blood, and the Blackwoods and the First Men have the magic of the old gods. Well, I mean, Bloodraven certainly seemed to. So it is possible that Daenerys... Well, it's a certainty that Daenerys Targaryen and, as well as Jon Snow, have First Men blood, which might make them wargs as well as dragon riders, which seems potentially very powerful and might have been the plan of Aegon V. This is all kind of outside the scope of this live stream. But, I mean, yeah, you make a good point, Curmudgeon Muffin, that having Valyrian blood plus First Men skin-changing blood could be a powerful combination. And some people speculate that Bran Stark, since Bran Stark is a powerful Greenseer, maybe he would be able to warg a dragon. And maybe that's something that Bran is going to do in the later Game of Thrones books. Like, it was pretty lame how Bran in Game of Thrones Season 8 kind of did nothing, apart from, like, talk vaguely about destiny and everything is as it needed to be. It would be pretty sick if Bran Stark warged a dragon in order to help save the world from the White Walkers in the books. And, yeah, I mean, Bran doesn't have Valyrian blood, as far as we know, but I imagine that could only help. I think that they will continue to explore those ideas. Thank you, Winner-Free iPhone, who says, I love the idea that the son of Jaehaerys' least favorite child is the one to claim his dragon. It's almost an ironic reconciliation to their relationship decades later. I think that is a fantastic point, Win-A-Free iPhone 4. Because, yeah, like, Jaehaerys' relationship with his daughter Sarah was terrible, and he practically disowned her, and he sent her to a nunnery. Jaehaerys and Sarah, they did not get along at all. So the fact that it's Sarah's bastard son Hugh who claims Jaehaerys' dragon Vermithor, you're right. It's a sort of a reconciliation. It's like Hugh has claimed Jaehaerys' legacy, even though Jaehaerys rejected Hugh's mother Sarah. Yeah, I agree. That's really cool. Thank you, Tamuki or Takumi, who says, why wouldn't Targaryens let their heirs bond with the biggest dragons such as Vermithor at the first place? Does growing up with an egg change things? Well, we saw what happened when people tried to claim Vermithor. Death happened. Fire happened. Would you let your 5-year-old child try to claim Godzilla? That would be very dangerous. I wouldn't do that. Rhaena Targaryen tried to claim some of these dragons. I think it's implied that Rhaena tried to claim Vermithor and Silverwing and Seasmoke, because Corlys made some line about, like, the dragons here at Dragonstone wouldn't accept Rhaena. So I think that Rhaena maybe did try to claim Vermithor and Silverwing and almost died. So it's dangerous to try to claim these big dragons. And also, even if your child does claim the dragon, would you trust your child with the most powerful weapon in the world? It's a huge responsibility. Is your child ready for that? So I think that's why the Targaryens don't get their children on these Godzilla nukes right away. And I think it's considered a bit safer to just give your child a dragon egg so that the dragon and the child can grow up together. And so we see how cute little Stormcloud is growing up alongside Aegon. And, that seems a lot safer so that they can sort of become powerful alongside each other. Thank you, Elizabeth Goebel, who says, I think the Ulf thing was a trap, but more to show some strength. Yeah, okay, so maybe Rhaenyra and Ulf weren't trying to, lure Vhagar into being attacked, but they were just luring Aemond and Vhagar to say, hey, look, we have more dragons than you, sucker. Yeah, you better run away. Yeah, maybe that's what Rhaenyra is saying here. Thanks for the super chat from Mason, who says, what is the deal with the black goat in Harrenhal? Yeah, so writer Sarah Hess described this as a haunted goat, and she joked that maybe Alice can transform into this goat, which is not entirely crazy because Alice does seem to be connected to the magic of the old gods, and skin changes can control animals, and she does have an owl. So I think it is entirely possible that Alice is magically connected to this goat and might magically influence Daemon, because we see the goat right before Daemon has his vision of Viserys. So maybe Daemon is being influenced by Alice's magic, maybe through the goat and maybe through the owl and through all of that magic. Maybe Daemon's just going a little loopy and he's having goat-based hallucinations. Many such cases. Or maybe the goat is actually the time-traveling ghost of Vargo Hoat, who is a character in the main Game of Thrones books who dies horribly at Harrenhal, and whose sigil is a black goat. So, shockingly, there's actually a lot of lore behind this goat, whose name, apparently, is Del. Jesus says, you think that Rhaenyra will be a little mad for Ulf's joyride to King's Landing? I mean, Rhaenyra does not look mad when she sees Vhagar approaching, so I guess that is a reason to think that maybe she did plan this with Ulf. Rhaenyra would probably look at least a bit scared or shocked to see Vhagar if she hadn't told Ulf to do this. So yeah, you guys are right. Maybe she did intend this. But yeah, if Ulf just went and did that himself, I think Rhaenyra might be angry. But I mean, I don't know if Ulf is even in control of Silverwing at this point. Rhaenyra said to Adam, do you think you can get Seasmoke to Dragonstone? So, they did highlight the fact that new dragon riders might not know how to control their dragons. So can Ulf control Silverwing yet? And, Adam said, please teach me dragon lore. Gerardus was saying that, we're going to teach Adam Valyrian and we're going to teach him to control his dragon. And here's the thing, the bloody Dragon Keepers just left. So if the Dragon Keepers, who were the people who know how to control dragons, remember Dragon School in the Dragon Pit last season? When Aegon and Aemond were being taught by the Dragon Keepers how to control dragons? If they don't have the Dragon Keepers, they don't have the dragon driving instructors available. So how are Ulf and Hugh going to get off their L plates, Thank you, Wilson621, who says, who is winning the twerk-off, Laris or Varys? I think that Varys probably has a juicier posterior than Laris does, but Laris certainly has some moves. Thank you, Tate Morehouse, who says, so those are Vermithor and Silverwing's eggs? Did Ulf just kill them? Yeah, Ulf did accidentally step on some dragon eggs. I don't think he smashed the eggs themselves. I think he smashed the, like, hardened shell around the eggs. Like, I don't think he smashed the eggs themselves. I don't know how delicate a dragon egg is. I get the sense that they're pretty tough. I mean, they've got those scales on them. And in the books, Daenerys's dragon eggs, at least, they're described as, like, fossilized. They're like stones, so they seem to have a bit of solidity to them. So yeah, I don't think they're like normal eggs that you can accidentally smash into an omelette. I think that they are fairly tough. Thank you, Hendrix, who says, in the books, if Rhaenyra and Alicent are more bloodthirsty in the books, isn't it likely that the histories are just exaggerating things? Yeah, that is part of it. Part of what's going on in the books is that the maesters who write the history book are trying to blame Rhaenyra and Alicent for everything. When in actual fact, maybe they weren't quite that bad. So yeah, that is definitely a possibility, because the books do really highlight this idea that the people who are writing the history books have biases and they have motivations, and it is in their interests to blame it all on the women so that they can continue the patriarchy for the next 170 years. Thank you, Dadrian, who says, if you really think about it, it's crazy that there's only been one black family, the Velaryons, for 100 years with no mention of incest. Yeah, I think it may be that in Hot D, the Velaryons have been doing their own incest thing for all these years. I think that might be the case, but they haven't really explained it. Thank you, Mike, who says, the Greens mentioned that Rhaenyra tried to claim Sea Smoke. Yeah, the Green Council mentions that. Not sure which bit you're referring to. Thank you for the donation from Rickstar, who says, I need to buy a pet black goat. I'm sure someone will sell you a Funko Pop. Franco says, since there's only one episode left, what is your opinion on the pacing of this season? I do have gripes with the pacing of this season. I feel like this season has been very slow. I feel like some of the episodes have felt repetitive. Like, we've gotten a lot of scenes in multiple different episodes where Rhaenyra says, I want to do something, but I can't, and I have to stay on Dragonstone. And we've got a lot of similar scenes where Daemon has had a vision and has been frustrated and annoyed. And we've had a lot of scenes where Corlys has talked to Alan at the shipyard, and Alan has been uncomfortable. Like, it feels like we've gotten some repetition, which I think is not good. In Season 1, we had these really distinct episodes that stood out because they were focused on a particular set piece or plot line. Like episode 1 had the tournament, episode 3 had the hunt, there was the funeral episode on Driftmark, there was the green episode in episode 9, the black episode in episode 10. Like, it was more episodic, it was more focused. Each episode was about something or centered around a particular event. But aside from episode 4 at Rook's Rest, and this episode with the sowing of the seeds, a lot of the episodes in Season 2 have not had a singular focus. I feel like the structure might have been more interesting if, instead of trying to have a short scene with every different character each episode, what if each episode focused on just one character? Because, like, I mean, it stands out with Rhaena in particular. In the last 3 episodes, we have had a very short Rhaena scene in each episode, and almost nothing happens in each of these Rhaena scenes. Like, we had like a 2-minute scene where, hey look, Rhaena is at the Eyrie, and then we had like a 2-minute scene where it's like, oh look, Rhaena saw a dead sheep, and now we have another scene where it's like, oh look, Rhaena is walking off towards the sheep again. Like, very little has happened in each of these Rhaena scenes. Maybe it would be better that instead of having these tiny short Rhaena scenes, what if they just had an episode that was focused more around Rhaena? And then we can actually make some progress in Rhaena's storyline instead of just tiny snippets. I'm not a TV show writer, and, you know, you don't have to listen to me, but I'm just imagining that maybe it could have been structured differently. And I speculate that maybe part of why the pacing and the structure is a bit weird might be because they the season was meant to be a 10-episode season, but it got changed to an 8-episode season. And so I wonder if the show creators had to change their plans because of that restructuring, and then they had to alter the pacing to make the story fit into the 8 episodes. They had to like move stuff from season 2 to season 3 because of the fewer episodes, so they had less to work with. I imagine it could have been a headache to change the length of the season. And it reminds me of what happened to George Martin when he split one of his books into 2 books, A Feast for Crows and A Dance with Dragons. Turns out that timelines and structure is a pain in the pinny when you are writing a complex continent-spanning story with an ensemble cast of 25 people who all have the same name. So it's not an easy job, and I do have my frustrations with season 2. Thank you to Ken, who says that when Daemon and Oscar walk out to greet the Riverlords, he touches the hilt of his sword to Oscar's chest, and then it was Oscar who demanded Daemon to swing his sword. Yeah, that's a good point, Ken. Do you think that maybe Daemon was telling Oscar subtly, hey, you should publicly tell me to cut off Willem's head because my sword is the solution to your political problem here? I think that is smart, and that might be what they're going for. Okay, we are going to close up this live stream. I'm sorry if I didn't get to answer your super chat, but I have answered as many as I could. We've been speaking for 3 hours straight. This has been fun. Please press like and subscribe. If you would like to hear more Dragon Talk, there is 61 hours of exclusive Dragon Talk at nebula.tv/AltShiftX with AltShiftX and Glidus, my disreputable nincompoop of a half-grunkle, SwiftX. You can also listen to these live streams as audio on the podcast app of your choice using the links below. There is also another podcast feed with the main AltShiftX videos in audio form, so you can listen however you'd like. And thank you to the moderator, Schubert Reads, for moderating the live chat. You might like to check out Schubert's YouTube channel. And remember to check out some of the other YouTubers and podcasters in the community like Grey Area and Joe Magician and Notacast and History of Westeros. There are lots of great people making content about House of the Dragon, not just AltShiftX, so go check them out. And have a lovely day, and we will talk about the finale of House of the Dragon Season 2 next week, same time, same place, and we will have our edited, scripted, explained video coming out as well. So thanks for watching, thanks for supporting, and see you next time. Cheers.